before we get going, guys, as always, a thumbs up does brighten my day. Thank you so much for all the comments and love on the recent videos. I'm lucky it's Monday morning. I've got a couple of days off work, so I can record some more videos. I can do some more blasting. I hope you have enjoyed the opening weekend for Season 34. I honestly can't quite remember having this much fun with this game in quite a while. Reason being is obviously the sanctified items, which we're making with our angelic crucibles, are really powerful. Obviously, big winner, Hunter, big winner, Crusader. A lot of people obviously on the Demon Hunter guide that we made, basically saying, check out Crusader. Of course, that album is insane. We will be making a video on it pretty soon. I've just been trying to finish off my strafe build, which is doing 125 speeds at like 1200 paragon, which is really, really nice. But anyway, topic of today's video is GR 150 has been cleared. So this is Monday morning. We have one weekend of the season. GR 150 has been cleared in 5 minutes on Monk, which is insane. Now, prior to the season starting, we did have a look at the Season 27 boards, and the Monk crushed Season 27. Wave of Light did get a rework, and it did actually get brought down since that patch, but I think just with the Altar of Rights coming into the game, it just looks like it's going to be easy. Well, I say easy 150s. You're going to need like 3,000 paragon. Skilled player, obviously, 2,400 paragon, clearing it in 5 minutes. Maybe a 150 can be done with much less paragon. The issue you've got really
you look like you could use a new item of indeterminate usefulness.
Like I'm at 1,200. If you can get 1,450,
I didn't even know I had that thing.
I'm overburdened.
Yes, you need insanely good gear if you're working on paragon. But the point is, it is of course
anything to do come back again.
I cannot afford that.
Sanctified power that summons the bells at the target location, and you attack the bell, and it like you put 5 of them down, attack them, and do the massive damage. It's going to take me a bit of time to gear into this. The good news is if you have a Demon Hunter, so whether you're doing the multi-shot for keys, or the super fast GR100s, whether you're doing a Shadow Impale, or whether you're making a ZDH, most of this stuff is
done.
Unleash your power.
Of it, so you can get yourself your Syndicate. You can certainly get started.
Need more time. I must wait longer.
At these clears, because I am potato at pushing, and I love the game. I love playing speeds. I love doing all the fun, quick stuff. Pushing, I do find challenging. I would like to improve at it. So I think it does look like Fist of Heavens definitely crunches really hard. We'll be able to get 150 done. Of course, we're using a sanctified power that the Fist of Heavens comes down automatically, which is kind of the point in the Vigilante belt because it also is something popular. Really strong build this. I've only just kind of like set it up so I don't have ancient gear. I'm currently doing my key running with it. I would say this Crusade seems a little squishy to start off with, but of course as you pump up your Guardian set with the ancient bits, as you get your augments on, binary passive just scales so well that you will get over that kind of like toughness hump. But at the moment, I'm still struggling a little bit with it. But 150, 10 minutes, maybe you can get it done with less paragon. Let's have a look at the next person. 1500. So 1500 Crusader, you can get a 150 done. Again, you will need nice gear, you will need fully augmented stuff, pretty much for the most part. But yeah, it looks to me like Monk and Crusader are easy peasy and we can get them done. Bob also has a 150 clip, which is lovely to see. Legacy Dreams Coaster is probably my favourite build from Season 27, so again, I'm looking forward to doing this. If you're setting yourself up a support bar, then you can kind of gear it out that way. And if not, Blood, Hooter is fun for speeds. We can do Whirlwind. Again, I haven't really played my Barb at all yet, but if you're doing Crusader, similar story to the Monk, most of these things are findable. So I found Primarch and Fury, so really I've already got this piece. Ice Climbers, again, easy to find. Blackthorns, Crusader shares the fire, so that's nice. Convention we can find. Zodiac we can find. Witching Elm we can find. Stock Gauntlets. Mortix we cannot. Fury of the Ancients we cannot. And then these 3 items, guys, super easy. Level 1, in cube, no problem. Level 1, in cube, no problem. Squirts, of course, we can find on Seder. We are Crown, of course, can find on Seder. We do need to drop with the 6% crit chance, though, so that we can roll on our Hota damage. Remorseless. Obviously, we can sanctify one of the Barb items. You know, it makes sense to do the Remorseless. And yeah, so we've got 3 that have like crushed 150 already, which is pretty nutty. Just having a quick look at Necromancer 139. Nobody's really playing Necro, not a lot of love, and that is such low paragon. But I strongly suspect by the time we get to next weekend, Necro will have busted out 150. Similar for the Wizard, again, I'm not sure there's that many people playing it. It looks like Firebirds is on top at the moment, and Witch Doctor 140. Again, well, I think by the time you get to the end of next weekend, all these classes will have 150s done. I mean, we've only got 3 to go, which are the 3 intelligent classes. The other 4 are done. So this is going to be a nutty season, guys. I think we're going to really absolutely push the envelope with power. The 4-player is going very, very well at the moment. 150 in like 2 minutes if you can get there. Raymond is mega strong as well because of the changes that we made and with the sanctified power. So again, another reason to set up the Monk, because that is utterly bonkers to be doing 150s in under 2 minutes, which is just insane. But yeah, we've got a lot of work. I've got a lot of work to do. Got a lot of videos to do. But the point of this is, yes, this is an insane season. It's possibly going to be stronger than the Soul Shards overall in terms of power and things like that. Maybe not, but it's certainly almost as powerful. So if you haven't played the season, I strongly recommend jumping in, make yourself a Demon Hunter, make yourself a Crusader, make yourself a Monk or a Barb, and you're going to have an absolutely fun time blasting out super hard tunes. I'm going to get recording some more videos. I'm going to have casual. Take it easy, guys. Peace.
Not ready yet. I'm still waiting.
Let's see the gem.
I am returning to town. Need more time. Not ready yet.
Such a
You
brain.
have proven yourself worthy.
It's Jets Weekly with your host, Connor Rabchak.
Welcome back to another edition of Winnipeg Jets Weekly. I'm your host, Connor Rabchak. The Winnipeg Jets kept up their winning ways this week as they have now won 6 straight games, sweeping their 3-game road trip that I'm going to cover in this episode before handing out some awards to the hardest working Jet and 3 stars of the week and previewing the upcoming schedule heading into the Four Nations face-off break. Let's start it off with the game back on Tuesday, a 4-1 win over the Montreal Canadiens. The Winnipeg Jets kicked off their 3-game road trip with a big 4-1 win over the Montreal Canadiens on Tuesday night, and it was Kyle Connor who led the way offensively with 2 goals in this game. Scott O'Neill after the game outlined how the Jets didn't play well at all in the first period, but really dominated the final 2 periods of this game, took over, and didn't look back. If you take a look at the stats behind me here, the shots 25-24 in Montreal's favor, the expected goals over 4 for Winnipeg to 2.5 for Montreal. The scoring chances were almost even as well, and the power play. The Jets' power play, a rare off night for them, 0 for 3, but they didn't take any penalties. Montreal with no power play opportunities, so this entire game came at 5-on-5, and Montreal was one of the best teams not only in the Eastern Conference, but in the NHL over the last month and a half. So to go on the road, play the entire game, or score all of the goals at 5-on-5, and come away with a big win was a great way to kick off the road trip, and the Jets' 4th straight win at the time. That brings us to Thursday night, where the Winnipeg Jets traveled to Boston to take on the Bruins. And if you remember the first time these two teams met this season, it was the Jets walking away with an 8-1 victory. But the fight at the end of the game was the main storyline. David Gustafson got in his first career fight against Trent Frederick, clearly overmatched, and both Adam Lowry and Scott O'Neill spoke after the game that they didn't like how that situation was handled. So coming into this game, a lot of the storylines were whether or not the Jets would look for revenge, and they got revenge. There were no fights in this game, but they walked away with a 6-2 win, and the Boston Bruins got booed off of their home ice, so you know the Jets played well in this one. And it was really the third period. Boston tied the game up 2-2 early in the third period with a shorthanded goal right off the faceoff, and then the Winnipeg Jets immediately responded with 2 goals, Mark Scheifele and Nikolai Ehlers getting them right back. And that brings us to Parker Ford, who was called up from the Manitoba Moose to the Winnipeg Jets for this game, and he absolutely earned that call-up. He had 7 goals in his last 9 games for the Moose, and he's from Rhode Island. He went to Providence College where he played hockey, and he grew up a Boston Bruins fan his entire life, and now he's making his NHL debut with tons of family and friends in attendance against the team that he grew up cheering for. And what do you know, he comes away with his first career goal, giving the Jets a 5-2 lead late in the game. This is one of those great stories where a rookie gets into his first career game and immediately scores in that game. A great moment for Parker Ford, and one that he and his family will never forget. And now for Saturday night, where the best team in the Western Conference, the Winnipeg Jets, traveled to Washington to take on the best team in the Eastern Conference, the Washington Capitals, and this game lived up to the hype. It's not often that these big primetime matchups live up to the hype, but this one did. 5-4 win for the Winnipeg Jets in overtime. Josh Morrissey with the OT winner, and this game had a ton of swings. Back and forth, the Winnipeg Jets held a 2-goal lead 3 different times at 2-0, 3-1, and 4-2. The Capitals scored 2 goals late in the third period to tie it, sending it to overtime, and then Josh Morrissey, the Jets' #1 star defenseman, gave them the win, his 2nd goal of the night. But like I said, this game truly had it all, and it was even throughout. The shots 30-29 in the Jets' favor. The expected goals 3.47 to 2.44. Scoring chances 30-24. And the Jets' power play got on the board. It was actually the 2nd unit as Cole Perfetti got another one. He's playing really well as of late. I'll talk about him more in the awards later on. But the Jets coming away with a massive win, securing first place in the NHL to kick off February and their 6th straight victory. Now it's time to hand out some awards, but before we do that, make sure you've hit the like button on the video, hit that subscribe and the notification bell so you don't miss Winnipeg Jets Weekly every single Monday morning. And while you're down there, drop a comment down below. There were a lot of standout performances this week, so who's your first star of the week? There are a lot of options. The Jets on a 6-game winning streak, a lot of players playing well. We'll get to my choice in a second, but while you're down there, drop a comment. Who's your first star of the week? Let's get into the awards.
The hardest working Jet.
my hardest working Jet of the week is Parker Ford. He got into his first career NHL game on Thursday night and immediately brought the energy. He was described as an energy guy that could score at the AHL level, and he did just that at the NHL level. He brought the energy, scored a goal on Thursday, brought the energy on Saturday as well in a big Hockey Night in Canada matchup against the Washington Capitals. And like I said earlier, scoring a goal against the team he grew up cheering for with tons of family and friends in attendance, that is a moment he will never forget. And for that, he gets the hard hat this week. Parker Ford is my hardest working Jet.
And now, the Jets Weekly 3 Stars of the Week.
My third star of the week is Cole Perfetti, who had a great game on Saturday night with a goal and an assist against the Washington Capitals in a big matchup. He came to play, and ever since a press conference where he said that he wanted to be more of a prick to play against, he has 7 points in the 5 games since then. So Cole Perfetti doing more on the cycle, his line is playing better, and the results are showing. He's now up to 11 goals, 21 assists, and 32 points on the season in 54 games, and he played his best game of the week on Saturday night against the Washington Capitals. For that, he's my third star of the week. My second star of the week is Mark Scheifele. He's now played 2 incredible games against the Boston Bruins this season, and I don't think that's a coincidence at all. Boston Bruins general manager Don Sweeney is also the general manager of Team Canada at the upcoming Four Nations Face-Off, the same Team Canada that left Scheifele off of their roster. Mark Scheifele played a great game Thursday night with 2 goals against the Bruins, tying Ilya Kovalchuk for the all-time franchise lead in goals with 328. And he also played a great game on Saturday with 2 primary assists on both of Josh Morrissey's goals. He's my second star of the week, Canada's leading scorer in the NHL at the time of this recording, Mark Scheifele. My first star of the week is a guy that we will see representing Team Canada at the Four Nations Face-Off, and that is Josh Morrissey. He had the 2-goal performance on Saturday night against the Washington Capitals, best in the West versus best in the East, Hockey Night in Canada, and Josh Morrissey elevated his game scoring that massive goal in overtime to give the Jets the win, and ultimately he had a great week both on Thursday night against Boston and against Montreal on Tuesday, but the standout performance was Saturday night against the Caps. The Jets' #1 defenseman, Canada's second best defenseman, Josh Morrissey is my first star. Let's take a look at the Winnipeg Jets' upcoming schedule as we head into the Four Nations face-off break. The Jets will now return home for 2 more games before the break, starting off February 4th, Tuesday night against the Carolina Hurricanes, which for me is one of the best matchups of the season so far. Mikko Rantanen, a top 10 scorer in the NHL, who we've seen many times in a Colorado Avalanche uniform, was traded just a few games ago to the Carolina Hurricanes, so that should be a great storyline to follow. Not to mention Seth Jarvis, who's from Winnipeg and is representing Canada at the upcoming Four Nations Face-Off, also plays for Carolina. So a lot of great storylines as the Jets take on the Hurricanes in a clash between 2 of the best teams in the NHL. The Jets will then take on the New York Islanders on Friday night, February 7th, which is another game of our Winnipeg Sports Talk Game of the Month ticket pack. Can't wait to see all of you WSTUs down there who bought tickets and enjoying the game on Friday night, February 7th. Then we hit the Four Nations Face-Off break, which runs from February 12th to the 20th, with Canada kicking off the tournament against Sweden on Wednesday, February 12th. Canada-USA is Saturday, February 15th. I'm sure everyone's looking forward to that. And then the finals are Thursday, February 20th. Then the Jets will return from the break on the road against the St. Louis Blues on February 22nd before getting into the rest of the season. I'll be back next week on Winnipeg Jets Weekly, breaking down the 2 games against the Hurricanes and the Islanders, and looking ahead to the Four Nations Face-Off and the rest of the Winnipeg Jets schedule. That's going to do it for this edition of Winnipeg Jets Weekly. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, make sure you hit the like button down below, hit that subscribe and the notification bell so you don't miss this exact video every single Monday morning, breaking down what happened for the Winnipeg Jets over the past week and previewing the upcoming week. Like I said, I'll be back next Monday breaking down that Hurricanes and Islanders games and previewing the Four Nations Face-Off. I'll see you all next Monday on Winnipeg Jets Weekly. Enjoy the games this week, everyone, and I'll see you next Monday.
I'm still waiting.
1:30 was kind of, we
Hustler Patterson and Michael Remus.
Hey now. Welcome everyone to an amazing Monday edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Michael Remus here in the host chair. One more day. Hustler, he's back tomorrow. He's in transit right now on the way home from Costa Rica. And I know he's going to be fired up to be in the chair tomorrow. But great to see so many people here on a Monday, February 3rd. Big weekend for the Winnipeg Jets. Massive win over the, clash of number one versus number one. I thought that was, the marquee game of Saturday. Hockey Night in Canada. Jets, Caps, and it was the Winnipeg Jets coming out on top in a dramatic fashion. Josh Morrissey scoring the overtime winner. 5-4 Jets win. That game was intense. It had two great teams. The crowd certainly into it. Maybe the game of the year. And as they seem to always do, they've got this chemistry. They know how to play together. Shifley, Connor, Morrissey, put them on the ice at 3-on-3 against anyone. And they're pretty good. No shootouts for the Winnipeg Jets this year. Very surprising. We're going to talk about that. The Jets are back at home. 2 more games before the Four Nations break. They're practicing today. And we'll get updates on that. Connor Rapchak is going to join me in the chair shortly. You saw him this morning. Podcast on YouTube, Jets Weekly, recapping the week that was. Yesterday morning, 9 a.m. Sunday live here on YouTube. And after on podcast, make sure you're checking those out for some great discussion. Have a number of other great guests coming on today. Ed Tate of BlueBombers.com. CFL free agency officially kicks off February 11th. However, the many signings we did find out over the weekend. The Bombers re-signing Dalton Schoen as receiver. Nice to see. We are seeing reports Kenny Lawler being targeted by the Ticats as he's set to become a free agent. Tyrell Ford, he's going to be joining his brother with Edmonton. And we did have some other Bomber signing rumors or reports that they signed. If you're looking for a returner, Peyton Logan. I don't think that's been made official. They did re-sign offensive lineman Eric Lofton today. And they did sign some other defensive players last week. So Ed's going to break it all down. I know he's got great insight. Mike McIntyre, he is at Jets practice today. We'll touch on the weekend that was and the games ahead. Some big game tomorrow night here against Carolina. It doesn't get any easier after playing Washington. And Friday is the Winnipeg Sports Talk game against the Islanders. We just found out Matt Barzal out indefinitely for them. Later on in the show, Jesse Pollock, TSN, Bar Down is going to join me for some Jets discussion. Might be a bit of a Jets Love Fest and Jesse, but also touching on some of the great content he's doing with Bar Down. And I want to say it was the biggest trade of the weekend, with the JT Miller trade on Friday. But the Luka Doncic trade, maybe the trade of the century there, late Saturday night. But Jeff Patterson, the Canucks Army, Big Wide post-game podcast, and Harrison Price. I talked with Jeff Patterson about JT Miller, his legacy in Vancouver, the trade. Him and Patterson, they just couldn't get along. They couldn't figure it out. Apparently not. And JT Miller is out the door, and the Rangers scored 4 points in his first 2 games with the Blue Shirts. Here we go. Time to bring in Connor Rapchak. He's been busy over the last, 24 plus hours. Jets Weekly, Sunday, post-game coverage as well here at illegalcurve.com for the Jets. Connor, what's going on, man? Welcome. How was the weekend?
Great weekend. I got to celebrate my dad's birthday on Saturday. That was really fun. And then the Jets game, obviously. I went to the Mid-Canada RV and boat sale on Sunday at the convention center. Yeah. Our family is big campers, so it's always fun to see, let's say the top of the line, maybe the expensive options. There are some there that are like $250 grand, $300 grand, massive trailers. They're super cool to see, like all of the innovations that have been made with motorhomes and trailers. It's incredible. But that was part of my dad's birthday weekend there. And then, Saturday night, the game of the year. I mean, how often does a game with that much hype actually live up to it. Number 1 in the West versus number 1 in the East. I joked to Jacob yesterday on Sunday Live that we were heading towards like a 3-1 Jets win with an empty netter, and it's just kind of going to be a dud because there was all this hype around the game. Hucking at Canada Saturday night, and it absolutely delivered. Josh Morrissey, incredible OT winner. He looks in prime form ahead of the Four Nations, and yeah, that was a great game Saturday night, and then a great show Sunday morning. It was a fun weekend for sure.
Yeah, the Jets coming in on a 6-game heater, and I think we don't do this enough on this show. Let's just take a look at the NHL standings, Connor, as I bring it up, because the Winnipeg Jets, here we are, almost at the Four Nations break. I mean, can you believe it? Number 1 in the league, sorting by points, 77 over the Capitals, 75 points percentage. Well, you know, the Capitals have played 2 less games. We're going to ignore that. But first, we'll go by conference. First in the West. I mean, that home, you know, playoff advantage, playing the second wild card, you know, looking like a real possibility. You don't want to see, you know, I know we've seen some like second half slowdowns in the past, but it certainly feels a bit different this year. The way the top line is playing, Dylan Sandberg's emerged, Cole Perfetti, he's on a bit of a heater here as well. Seems like the Jets have, I don't know, learned some lessons from that playoff series against Colorado and really entered the season on a bit of a mission.
Yeah, and how often have we seen this team stumble into the All-Star break? Like, usually the dominant narrative around this time of year, Remo, is that they need the break, and they look tired, and they're banged up, and all that. And those excuses would be available to them with no Adam Lowry, no Morgan Barron, the flu bug that was going around the room last week with Nikolai Ehlers and Josh Morrissey, right? Like, that excuse is there, but the Jets just don't care this year. They've won 6 straight games without Adam Lowry, and Scott Arniel called out their performance as embarrassing against Utah, and they've just rattled off 6 straight wins. It's I think it's a sign of growth for this team because every single year we're almost like on edge, like we're waiting for it. We're waiting for the second half to allow because it's become such a regular occurrence here. Not this year. They're beating great teams. They look great in the process. Their underlying numbers supported. The process is right. Power play's still red hot. You have Josh Morrissey scoring great overtime winners, and even on a night like Saturday night where maybe wasn't the top line's best game, Mark Scheifele still had 2 primary assists on both of Morrissey's goals late in the game, and still Cole Perfetti had a goal and an assist, and he's had 7 points in his last 5 games. And Dylan Sandberg, we can talk about him here, but everything just seems to be going right for the Winnipeg Jets right now. And as we sit here in early February, that's a weird thing to say because in years past that has not been the case. Usually this is the time of year where they start to slide a little bit, but this year it's different, and this is the time of year where they're ascending going into the break, 6 straight wins. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, pretty incredible. You mentioned that game on Saturday. You know, the first 5 minutes seemed like a bit of a feeling of process, but it was the Winnipeg Jets power play 2 getting on the board. And, you know, when line 1 wasn't going, you know, for a while there, that line 2 wasn't giving you a ton of offense, but I think they were all over the ice. And on the first goal, you know, it was Sandberg who scored, but it was all about the zone entry from Ehlers to Perfetti on the second goal. Nemestikov, I mean, on that first goal, basically just he said, hey, Vlad, you want to just walk in and walk in the whole ice? And he just walked through their whole team and shot. It was Cole Perfetti. And, I mean, it's so funny. Here, guys, you hear something like Scott Arniel call out the team after the loss to Utah, saying that was embarrassing. Followed up 6 straight wins. Cole Perfetti, you know, says, hey, I ain't to start playing more like a prick. You do that. How about Cole Perfetti's numbers? Mike McIntyre putting this one out on X. 5 games, 4 goals, 2 assists, 7 points. Like, has he found a level here where he can avoid the second half slowdown that he did last year?
Absolutely, and it resulted in him, you know, being benched by Rick Bowness for a stretch there and only playing in 1 playoff game, right? So I think Cole Perfetti has found a new level here, and I'm not gonna lie, he does look like more of a prick to play against. Like that night that he said that at a morning skate. That night he had the hat trick and he led the Jets in hits, which was hilarious. Like he just says he wants to be more of a prick to play against, then he goes out and throws 3 hits. It's like, of course. But yeah, these last 5 games from him have been great. That second line has been incredible. They were great against Boston. They were great against Montreal, and they were great. Probably their best game in a long time. Maybe their best game of the season was Saturday night against Washington. They played great at 5-on-5. The Dylan Sandberg goal that gave the Jets a 2-0 lead after the second unit gave them the 1-0 lead was the second line. There was tons of pressure there. Vladislav Domestikov just missed on like a one-timer chance. Perfetti picked it up, gave it to Sandberg, who sniped it home. I mean, that second line, they've had their ups and downs this year. They started down the first couple games of the year. Then they were great. And then before Nikolai Ehlers' injury, or after it, I should say, they really were struggling to generate offense and struggling to score. But this past week in the 6-game winning streak, they have been great together. And Nikolai Ehlers, through the flu game, Cole Perfetti with the prick comment, like there's all these things going right for the second line, and it just adds to a long list of things going right for the Winnipeg Jets together.
Yeah, speaking of second line, it was also this, second D pair getting on the scoring as well. Dylan Sandberg, has he found some offensive touch here? Going back to that loss against Utah, he's got 5 points in his last 7 games. Neil Pionk as well with the shot that was deflected by Iafallo. The difference between Neil Pionk with Sandberg and without is incredible. And Dylan Sandberg, I know you mentioned this. There's an RFA after the season. I think his contract value keeps going up and up after every game. And you were noting, Connor, 26, 6, and 1. The Winnipeg Jets with Sandberg in the lineup. And clearly all about number 54 in those wins.
Yeah, it's all him. It's all him.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, what is he? I mean, we talked about this on Friday, but what can you say? Like, this team is in first place. Everyone's having career years. It's going pretty well.
Yeah, and Dylan Sandberg has been at the center of it. And I said on Sunday with Jacob Stoller, let's go back to training camp for a second, where the question around Dylan Sandberg was, okay, he did well in a third pair role, but can he step up into the top 4? How will he fare against tougher competition? Like, those were the question marks surrounding the Jets' blue line as a whole. Dylan Sandberg's been the most improved player this season by a long margin. Like, he has been one of the Jets' best stories. Absolute breakout season, contract year, pending RFA. Every single fan, I'm sure in chat, is saying lock him up for 8 years because he's been that good on the Jets' second pair. And I put this tweet out as well Saturday night. Sandberg had 21 minutes of even strength time on ice on the road against the top team in the East, where the Jets don't control the matchups. And in those minutes, he had his goal, and the Jets outscored the Capitals 2-0. The shot attempts were 27-11. The shots were 14-7. The scoring chances 13-3. And the expected goals percentage was 82%, with Sandberg on the ice, on the road against the top team in the East, where they don't control the matchups. So, I mean, like, what more can you say about Dylan Sandberg? I don't think anyone could have predicted this before the season, that he would be this effective, because he has been like a high-end second pair defenseman, and he's earning himself a lot of money on his next contract this offseason.
Yeah, we'll be following that. Well, we've said enough about the game. Let's hear from Winnipeg Jets head coach Scott Arniel on Saturday's win.
Yeah, obviously, really liked our first. Came out great. Second period was a little too casual. They got the momentum back and kind of got after us there a bit. But, in third, it was kind of, we got the lead back, got out in front, and then kind of, we got back on our heels, and they had a big push. And at the end of the day, when it gets to overtime, you just obviously hoping for that opportunity, that chance where you get those odd man situations, and nice play, big goal by Jamie. Yeah, I mean, certainly, obviously, we knew how we were both sitting in the standings and both having real good years. We hadn't won here in 11 tries, so that had a lot to do with it, too. Finally getting a win in here was nice, but, yeah, you're going against some elite players on the opposite side, and we've been watching what they've been doing. You're following the standings, watching them on the highlights, and we had a game like that. Pretty exciting for the fans, maybe not so much for the coaches.
Yeah, I saw Dan Robertson play with Playboys for TSN taking in that game as a fan, saying, hey, that was one of the most exciting games. The crowd was into it. You saw that at the end of the game, and Arniel mentioned they got some good players. Dubois, taking it to the net, and seemingly untouched in French, just putting one in. Tom Wilson, with the hard forecheck there. they kind of just gave him the front of the net easily. Any concern on the goals? I mean, the Jets are known for a defensive team. Is this just two good teams playing hockey? Because the Capitals, they're hitting the unders all the time. Logan Thompson also a top goalie, but here we had a total of 9. And that goal, Ovechkin scoring from distance. If that's anyone else, you're like, I don't know, man. Hellebuyck, you'd like to see him save that slap, but this is the guy who scored more goals in the NHL than any other player, except for one. What do you make of the total in this game? It's certainly surprising to see 9 goals between these two teams.
Yeah, 2 great defensive teams, 2 great goaltenders. I was not expecting a 5-4 game. Like I said off the top, I thought we were headed towards 3-1 with an empty netter and more of a dud. But no, this game was incredible. And the Jets' goals, I will say, and I brought this up on Sunday Live with Jacob as well. If there's one thing to be concerned about, last year in the playoffs, they got shredded by the Avs forecheck, and they looked overwhelmed at times. I thought the Washington Capitals forecheck was incredible on Saturday night. They were getting pucks in. They're a big, fast, strong team. And the Jets turned the puck over a lot when the Capitals were forechecking hard, and they laid a few big hits as well, and that resulted in some goals for the Caps, directly resulted in goals. And the Dubois one was a defensive breakdown. I mean, he was all alone in front. I'm sure everyone was rolling their eyes like, oh, of course, Pierre-Luc Dubois scores against the Jets. I think that's just money at this point. He's going to score against the Jets. He did last year in Winnipeg when he was with LA. But yeah, if there's one thing to be concerned about with the defensive coverage, I think it's the Jets' ability to handle the forecheck when they go up against an elite forecheck. And the Caps had a really good one on Saturday night, led to some goals. That's something the Jets will have to clean up going forward. But hey, they're the first place team in the league and first in like a million categories. So I don't know how we can really nitpick anything. But yeah, there's definitely some concern there from me.
We can nitpick. It's what we do here.
What we do.
On a daily basis. If you want to hear more nitpicking, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and YouTube will keep recommending such great content. But here's Josh Morrissey on scoring the OT winner, his second of the night, and getting the win over the Washington Capitals.
A little bit of an extended shift there. I think they may have been a bit tired, and we played a lot with those 2 guys in overtime, and Scheif did a good job driving through and just tried to slip my check and go to the net. He made an amazing pass and had half the net to shoot at, so it was nice play by him. Yeah, I mean, it was a crazy game. I think there was a lot of weird stuff going on, a lot of goals. Obviously, both teams are known for scoring, but also their defensive game. So, I think both teams would probably want to clean some of those things up. But it was a fun game, a lot of swings, great energy in the arena. And, it's nice to be able to stick it out and get the 2 points.
Yeah, sign me up for 82 more of those, or I guess 30. That's how many games are left in later on in the season. We did talk about Cole Perfetti and how well he's playing since saying he wanted to be more of a prick to play against. Here's Josh Morrissey talking about Cole Perfetti's impact in his play of late.
Yeah, I mean, he's played great all year, and obviously guys get hot and cold, and I think what's been great is whether he's been scoring or not, he's been contributing every single night, in ways that maybe go unnoticed. He's such a smart player, and plays great at both ends of the ice, in whatever role he's asked to play. So, you see what kind of hockey sense he has and skill, and when maybe it's not going in for him, that it's right around the corner. But I think that maturity in his game, that he doesn't score for a few games, it doesn't change anything. He's still being a great player for us, and he's only going to continue to get better.
Only going to continue to get better. Cole Perfetti finding his way as a young player in the NHL. The Jets were off yesterday, flew back, and today back at practice. Mike McIntyre reporting no Adam Lowry, no Morgan Barron, Parker Ford, and Brad Lambert are back up with the Moose. And Josh Morrissey, Kyle Connor, and Connor Hellebuyck are wearing their national gear. Connor Hellebuyck's got his USA helmet with an eagle right on the front forehead portion. But as far as the lines go, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. No changes to the lines or D pairs. Hainela, Fleury, Lambert, extra skaters. And again, Lowry, Barron injured. So the lines, you can just close your eyes and read them off. Connor, Scheifele, Velarde, Ehlers, Nemesnikov, Perfetti, Niederreiter, Kupari, Appleton. I follow Gustafson, Ford, Lambert rotating in, Morrissey, DeMello, Sandberg, Young, Stanley, Miller, Fleury, Heinola. So just another day at the office for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, and it was interesting. They sent both Ford and Lambert down to the Moose yesterday, and a lot of people were wondering, oh, what's going on there? Is Morgan Barron healthy? Are the Jets going to run with 7 defensemen? But then they called them right back up, and it was just a day of cap savings, I guess. I mean, you had those players not on your NHL cap or working against your NHL cap for that one day. So I guess they banked a little bit of cap space, and those players are back up, and it looks like Parker Ford will be right back in the lineup tomorrow night against Carolina, which will be a great game. I mean, I previewed it on Jets Weekly. You got Mikko Rantanen with the Hurricanes. These are 2 of the best teams in the NHL as well. Seth Jarvis, who's from Winnipeg, will be representing Canada at the Four Nations, plays for Carolina. That should be a really good game, and I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, I think, 2 more games until the Four Nations. Very exciting, in just over a week. We'll have, I forget the first game, but we'll have Canada, USA, Finland, Sweden. I feel like the excitement getting a bit higher. You saw the jerseys released over the weekend. Josh Morrissey's trying out his new gear. It's getting, people are starting to talk about it more. You're seeing TV ads. I feel like, once we get to games, it's going to be some exciting for some, big odds.
Yeah, this was my my big rant. It was almost like Remo rant-esque on Sunday Live on the Four Nations. I was trying to fire people up, get people excited, because I don't know. Some people in chat were very excited for it. You know me, I'm very, very excited for this tournament. It's been way too long since we've had. I know it's not true best on best. It's not the Olympics. It's not every team has evolved, but it's been way too long since we've seen the best players in the world suit up for Canada. So I'm pretty pumped for it, and to see Josh Morrissey wearing the gear, to see Josh Morrissey score 2 goals against the best team in the East, and looking in prime form, it's got me even more excited. And that first game I think is February 12th, Canada Sweden. So I'm pretty pumped for that.
Canada, Sweden, there we go. And as far as NHL news, we're going to get to the Bombers signing CFL free agency. Picking up, we did have a big trade on Friday. It was the first trade of the weekend. JT Miller on his way to the Rangers from Vancouver. Philip Hedl and a first-round pick were the key pieces in that. And then Vancouver quickly flipped the first-round pick to Pittsburgh for Marcus Pettersson. The JT Miller saga in Vancouver, it's seemingly over. And, we'll get more info on that later on in the show from Jeff Patterson. But your reaction to the JT Miller trade on Friday?
I think it was a reminder that a lot of NHL trades have to do with leverage. JT Miller, the trade market was one team, and it was the New York Rangers, because that was the only place he was going to waive his no trade or no move, whatever it was, to go to, was the Rangers. So yes, my initial reaction was, whoa, that's it? That's all they got for JT Miller? But then when you remember that the Rangers are negotiating against no one, it becomes a little bit more clear why they were able to get him at maybe a lesser price for Philip Hedl, a 1, and another defenseman thrown in there. But yeah, I mean, Vancouver, they were in a tough spot. I'm sure you'll get into it later on, but we don't know what was going on in that locker room. Clearly something was happening. And JT Miller with 4 points in his first 2 games as a Ranger is hilarious. Like, both of these players are going to go on a tear now. But yeah, I think it was a good reminder that a lot of NHL trades, especially when it's so publicly known that this players are going to wait for one team, it's a good reminder that leverage has a lot to do with it, and the return wasn't that great, but maybe that was the best offer.
Yeah, that one was certainly fascinating. JT Miller with 4 points in his first 2 games with the Rangers. We got Edge Case coming up. I'll be sending them the link. I didn't send it before the show. But, the one piece of hockey news that came out on Saturday night while watching the game, I can't say I was too surprised. And it was Ryan Hartman giving a DDT. I know it was Royal Rumble weekend. Ryan Hartman upset he couldn't take part, gave a nice DDT, driving the head into the ice of Tim Stützle of the Ottawa Senators. Was given a match penalty, given an in-person hearing, And this is a player,
Not
Connor,
ready yet.
who we've seen him, intent to injure players on the Jets. Nikolai Ehlers interference. He was suspended 1 game for that while Ehlers missed the playoffs. Intentionally
Need more
high stick
time.
Cole Perfetti in the face. And I said we should be thanking Ryan Hartman for his precision with the hockey stick because, he only had stitches. What if he had knocked teeth out? What if he had poked an eye out? But Ryan Hartman is a skilled guy with a hockey stick. And there he was again, Tim Stützle had stitches on his forehead. Didn't leave the game. Ottawa did win, but Ryan Hartman, he's having in-person hearing. What did you think of that play? And how many games? Because, I could sit here and be like, yeah, he should be kicked out of the league. He should have 15 games. But I have no idea what they're going to do. The in-person hearing gives him 5. They can give him 5 or more, but I don't know how that play is any different than what he's done in the past, and he got barely a slap on the wrist. So, what do you make of this? I was pretty livid, Connor, that he's injuring more players.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I also don't know what the Department of Player Safety is going to do because nobody knows, right? But this was an incredibly dirty play from an incredibly dirty player, taking his head and driving it into the ice. It's a good thing he got kicked out of the game. And with an in-person hearing, correct me if I'm wrong with this, but that's at least 5 games if it's in person.
They have the option to give him 5. Michael Russo noted that Coughlin had an in-person hearing once and didn't get anything. So it gives him the option. His last suspension was April of 2024. He was suspended 3 games for unsportsmanlike conduct against the Knights. He threw his stick at officials after the Knights scored an empty net goal in overtime. That's the one that he got the most for, unsportsmanlike. Not for, illegally hitting a player in the head. Not for interference. Not for any of the times he's been fined for slashing and spearing. So I don't know if it's like the more infractions, the harsher the punishment gets, but they should have been punishing him more earlier on. He's been fined 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, suspended 4 separate times. Enough of this guy. I'm sick of seeing him. I hope they lay the hammer down. But I don't know. Kupari was fine. Sometimes they just suspend based on the results, not the action. I know this is unite. This is in a world where everyone is divided. All hockey fans united against wanting to see him get major games here.
Exactly. I guessed on Sunday Live 8 games, but again, I don't know. I don't know. What I would do is I'm with you. If I was in part of the Department of Player Safety, I'd lay the hammer down. But I think 7, maybe 8 games, and maybe I'm putting too much faith in Department of Player Safety. He grabbed his head and drove it into the ice. That should be north of 5 games without a doubt in my mind. So, yeah, nothing new from Ryan Hartman. I was not shocked to see that he had yet another dirty play that was filling my timeline on Saturday. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the Department of Player Safety handles this because a lot of eyes are on it. And Ryan Hartman, a repeat offender, if his last infraction was April of 2024, and has a long history of breaking rules like you just outlined there. So I'm expecting north of 5 games, maybe in that 8 to 10 range, but maybe that's too much faith in the Department of Player Safety. I don't know.
Yeah, I would love to see lengthy suspension, but I'm not holding my breath. I joked on Twitter, was Stützle even hurt? He just had stitches. He came back. He was fine. So, what, did he really even do anything then?
What's the problem?
And they gave him a match penalty. He already served a game from the match penalty. And
Right.
April, that was so long ago. Connor, that was last season. I don't even think he's a repeat offender now, because I'm sure there's some loophole where they can say that he's not, because that's what we've seen. They haven't laid the hammer down when I'm sure, I don't know if the Jets are calling them up and saying, you guys could have done something. Could have major, intentionally stick Perfetti in the face. Gave Ehlers a serious upper body injury on a needless interference. So we'll see what happens. We're glued to it. I'm fired up about it. I'd like to see a lot of games, but you never know. So spin the wheel.
Not ready yet.
Anyways,
spin the wheel.
Spin the wheel. Anyway, we're going to be joined by Ed Tate in a second. Connor, thanks so much for coming on. I look forward to chopping it up with you toward the end of the show.
Yeah, see you later in the show. Thanks.
There is Connor Rabchak. Follow him on X, Connor Rabchak1. Everybody's on Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, all the things, all the social medias. You can follow us on every social media, Sports Talk WPG. podcast as well. It's coming out right after. Here, we're going to talk Bombers, CFL free agency, February 11, but so many signings to get caught up on. We'll get to Ed Tate in a second, but first, here is Hustler.
Do you want to thank the great people over at Rolly's Transfer for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Keep an eye out on the roads. The new Rolly's WST truck is out helping Winnipeg.
For the Blue Bombers, do you have any insight?
We're saying, why is this taking so long? Which is here without knowing.
Meeting saying, hey, guys, it doesn't really hurt them in free agency. Guys are looking at the if he were, to complete, if what we expect to happen does happen.
Yeah, dynamic player as a returner and kind of an underrated running back. Nice skill set. He'd give some depth to Brady Oliveira. And, last year, the Janarian Grant thing, it took forever to kind of get an answer from him. And then by the time he signed with Toronto, it was the Bombers had already loaded up on returners to bring in, the candidates to bring in and to take a look at that spot. And as we know, it became a bit of a problem area last year, and that's why Lucky Whitehead was brought in after the fact. I just, I'm not sure that the team didn't learn from that a little bit in the offseason and didn't want the mystery of who their return guy was going to be going into training camp. And so if they get a Peyton Logan, I think that, it gives you some stability at that position. In this league, the punt return and kick return numbers, if it's one guy handling it, that's a lot of touches. It's not like the NFL. And so that candidate, that person is going to be very busy. And I don't think that you can just fly a bunch of guys in and pick the best guy. You need someone that understands the importance of the no yards rule and not letting the kick bounce and all the little intricacies of how to return in this game. And so a veteran guy would be very important, and I think that's an area that the Bombers targeted. Janarian Grant re-signed with Toronto on the weekend. I know a lot of people were hoping that he would come back to Winnipeg. It's not surprising to me he stayed in Toronto. So, if it's Peyton Logan, that's a good ad for this team because it was a bit of a mystery for a lot of last year. I thought Lucky Whitehead did a capable job, but you'd like to have a home run threat back there.
Looking at the Bombers' Twitter account for news and stuff, but I do see they just announced a couple concerts this summer at the Princess Auto Stadium. We haven't had, a big concert in a while. I see Def Leppard and Jason Aldean headlining, so certainly some exciting news for music fans in the city. But you look around CFL free agency, is there a team that has stood out to you so far that can challenge the Bombers for either, the West or, be competition when it comes to, being here in the Grey Cup game? It is in Winnipeg this year, so certainly exciting season for them.
Well, I think a lot of teams, add pieces at this time of year, Remo. I mean, again, Edmonton's, it's because of the volume of additions they've made that they jump out right away. BC's kind of tinkered with some things. They got Nathan Rourke to take a little bit of a pay cut so they could bring in more pieces. And, it's Buck Pearson and his team out there now. I like what Saskatchewan's done, getting Mike Rose, who was let go by Calgary, along with James Vaughters, who signed here. Toronto always finds people, but every team has done something. Hamilton's kind of loading up with Ted Gavaya, the former Bomber assistant GM, now calling the shots there. That's why everybody gets excited at this time of year, because every team has done something. Ottawa's re-signed a lot of guys. And it gets people, their juices flowing again about the start of training camp. And everybody's 0-0 at this time of year, and you get excited about what your team has done. Again, though, you can get, I think, a little bit, again, you don't win the Grey Cup in free agency. So I really appreciate what Edmonton's doing, because that market needs an injection. The new owner, Larry Thompson, and the new coach, Mark Killam, the new GM, and Ed Hervey, they've really done some nice things. But that organization and that franchise needs an injection like this, and it's good for the league. I think the Bombers are going to be right there with everybody again, as they always are, because of the continuity, because of this coaching staff and the way they do things. So let's see how this all settles down. And, you know, if we could touch base again on March 1st, Remo, we might have a better feel for what everybody's going to look like. Because there's always, after free agency opens too, there's always a guy or two that gets signed in that week or two after the market opens that you think, wow, that guy was still available, or he becomes available and a team adds it on. And by the time November rolls around, you're looking back and saying, boy, that signing came 10 days into free agency, and that was the biggest one of the offseason. So we'll check in again on March 1st or so and see where this team is at compared to everybody else.
Yeah, we'll check in again, and as free agency officially begins February 11th, what else are you expecting to see from the Bombers? Any changes to, I don't know, backup quarterback or any other areas that you have circled on your depth chart?
You know, I know they like Jake Dolegala, who they picked up last year and came in, and Terry Wilson, who was the number 2 for a lot of last year. But Danny McManus, that's one thing Danny McManus does, is he's a former quarterback, a Hall of Fame quarterback. They'll have a couple of prospects in here, and I know people are thinking about what's the succession plan for after Zach Collaros, and that's a fair question. They'll hopefully find 2 or 3 prospects that they could bring into camp. I'm not sure that they're going to add a veteran guy. You know, I think Ottawa added Matthew Schultz yesterday, so that's not the kind of guy that moves the needle at all for me. No offense to him, but if you're bringing him in, he's just for depth. I think what this team needs is to find a future star somehow, a young guy that they can maybe say, hey, that might be our succession plan right there. But that's the kind of thing that might happen between now and May, because Darren Granger, a guy that they did like, has retired. And he came in last year, got hurt in the preseason. They brought him back in the fall and when the practice roster expanded, but he's decided to quit. So I'm sure there's other guys like that out there. I know there's other guys like that out there, and I trust Danny McManus to find a potential star or 2.
Perfect. Well, Ed, we're looking forward to seeing how it shakes out for the blue and gold. We've got the schedule, we've got some signings, and it's February. I'm starting to do my summer plans here. I know a lot of that will be including the Blue Bombers all the way to the Grey Cup here. Well, you hope that they're in the game, but the Grey Cup will be here either way in November. Ed, it's always great talking to you. Love your new setup there at the Blue Bombers office. And what's next? When's the next episode of The Huddle on the Blue Bombers YouTube?
That's a great question. We were trying to plan that out for next week around free agency. The market opens on Tuesday. We used to have our show every Tuesday. We might push it till later in the week if we can have one, just to see if once the smoke clears a little bit, to get a better picture of the lay of the land. So stay tuned on that. We'll keep you posted, but we're hoping to have one next week.
Perfect. Check them out here on YouTube, Winnipeg Blue Bombers at WPG Blue Bombers CFL. Ed, thanks again. Hopefully we can catch up in the near future. Really appreciate you taking the time to join me here today on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Appreciate you, Michael. Have a good day, man.
Thanks. Yeah, you too. Enjoy it. Yeah, keeping track with all the signings. There's so many. I am refreshing Farhan's on it. Insiders are on it. So busy time of year for CFL. But we're going to get back to the pucks. Winnipeg Jets are in first place. They did practice today. Mike McIntyre was there at Iceplex. We'll be chatting with him about the number 1 team in the NHL. That's Winnipeg Jets. But first, here's us.
Do want to thank our friends at Princess Auto for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Of course, Princess Auto, founded in Winnipeg, headquartered in Winnipeg, now coast to coast, but with 3 Winnipeg locations to serve you. Princess Auto is where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around everything you need to complete those projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Pop down to the location on Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, or for the folks in Westman in Brandon, and check it all out for you. And of course, you can get working 24/7, 365 on those ideas by checking out the Princess Auto website and shopping online as well. Be a minute before we're at Princess Auto Stadium, but we've got that Bomber schedule, so we'll count down to the days. And in the meantime, pop by your local Princess Auto today. Got to give a big cheers to our friends at Canadian Club, Canada's favorite Canadian whiskey. Speaking of Princess Auto Stadium, Canadian Club, of course, is the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Looking forward to seeing and cheersing many of you in the north end of the stadium at some point next year. But in the meantime, 12 months a year, Canadian Club is Canada's favorite original Canadian whiskey since 1848. Pop by your local Manitoba liquor marts and look for the Canadian Club display featuring Canadian Club, Canadian Club Classic, Canadian Club 100% Rye and more. And when you're popping by your local beer store, keep your eyes out for Canadian Club and Ginger Ale, pre-mixed cocktails in cans available at vendors throughout the city. Also want to thank our friends at Wallace & Wallace for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Of course, Wallace & Wallace has been the fencing and overhead door specialists and leaders since 1946, serving both commercial and residential customers. If your property needs the security and protection of a new fence, Wallace & Wallace has every kind you could possibly need. Vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood fences. And if in 2025 you might be thinking of a new overhead garage door for your home, talk to the gang at Wallace & Wallace. They have Winnipeg's largest selection of overhead garage doors, which means they'll have one to perfectly match your home and look great and add value to your home as well. Give Wallace & Wallace a call, 452-2700. The Wallace & Wallace team will be happy to pop down and arrange a time to come out and see you and give you a free estimate. You can also check them out online at wallacefences.com, wallacedoors.com, or pop down and see them at their showroom on Lowson Crescent, just off of Kenaston.
There's Hustler. He's back tomorrow. Can't wait to hear all about his trip in Costa Rica. I know he did some zip lining, some poker playing, so he's going to be fired up. We're going to be getting fired up for Jets and Carolina. And one guy who's at Winnipeg Jets practice today as they prepare for those Carolina Hurricanes tomorrow, which will be another excellent game. Mike McIntyre. Mike, how's it going? Everything seems to be all roses in Jetsland, right? Winners of 6 straight. You know, I don't know, this road trip I thought got off to a rocky start with the first period of Montreal.
Yeah.
Scott Arniel, called them out the week before against Utah. I thought they were slipping, but doesn't seem like there's going to be a second half slide, at least not at this point, for the Winnipeg Jets, who continue to put up impressive numbers across the board.
Yeah, you know, it used to be a 6-game winning streak would be like something pretty significant, and yet, Remo, you may have the number, but I believe this is now 4 times already this year that the Jets have rattled off at least 6 straight wins. And again, they still have a third of the season left. So when you've had 4 6-game or longer winning streaks, you are certainly doing something right more often than not. And yeah, I mean, I just thought the Jets got better as that road trip went on. I would say that first period on Saturday night in Washington, when you consider the opponent, when you consider that, you know, the Jets, they had every reason to be pretty comfortable at that point, right? They just won big in Boston. They'd won 5 in a row. You know, at that point, no matter what happens in Washington, you're coming home with a winning road trip because you're 2-0. You know, that's a game where I think a lot of teams would get a little comfortable. And the Jets came out in that first period, certainly, and they played like their lives depended on it. And, you know, Washington's a very good team, so you expected that they were going to have some pushback as the game went on. And for my money, Remo, that was maybe the game of the year. That in terms of like entertainment value, excitement, that was tremendous hockey between 2 really good teams. And sign me up for 7 more of those in June. Of course, if Washington and Winnipeg are playing in the playoffs, it has to be the Stanley Cup final, given that they are in opposing conferences. And as we sit here today, why not Winnipeg and Washington? They're the number 1 teams in each conference, and they both put on a pretty impressive performance on Saturday night. Fitting that it went to overtime. That game deserved some bonus hockey, and that was a good one. And I'm not trying to sell tickets for the Jets here, but folks, mark March 25th down on your calendars, because that's when the Capitals are back in town for their annual visit. And not just the fact that they still could be, best in the East and best in the West at that point, but Alex Ovechkin might be even closer to breaking the record. The goal the other night against the Jets brings him one step closer, and we'll see if he can go on maybe a bit of a heater here over the next 6 or 7 weeks before the Capitals come to Winnipeg. But yeah, I mean, I'm just thoroughly impressed with this Winnipeg team. And the fact that they have done this without their on-ice and off-ice leader, like they're 6-0 without their captain. And no, Adam Lowry's not the most talented player on the Jets, so taking him out of the lineup, you still obviously have a lot of scoring threats. But I dare say go through any NHL team in the league, remove the captain for 6 games, and then, the schedule the Jets have had with some road games and some tough tests, Colorado, right after Lowry gets hurt, Boston, Washington, like they have reeled off some impressive victories in some tough circumstances. And I think that really just speaks volumes about what this team is this year.
Yeah, you've seen some players step up in his absence. Kupari and Gustafsson down the middle. Nemestikov has had some nice games. And how about Cole Perfetti? You noted that since he said he needs to start being a prick on the ice, 7 points in 5 games, had a big goal kicking off the scoring on Saturday. Feel like it's starting to click for Cole, or is this just another one of his hot streaks?
Yeah, I mean, he is a player who we've seen him have streaks before, and then, he goes all too quiet for all too long. I don't know, there's just something about this feels a little different to me, because maybe it's that self-awareness, the fact that he, said what he said about other ways he can contribute. And he's a very thoughtful young man. I mean, anybody who's heard him speak knows that, I think. And he's the first to admit that certainly in the past, even as recently as a year ago, he would not have handled this the same way that he's handled it this year. Some adversity, some tough times. And, I wonder, Remo, and I asked Vlad Nemestikov about this at practice today. It strikes me that Vlad Nemestikov is probably rubbing off on Cole Perfetti in a real positive way. Vlad Nemestikov is a player who plays like a bit of a, quote, prick, and finds ways to contribute that don't always reflect on the score sheet. I said to Vlad this morning, like, when Cole Perfetti said what he said, he could have been talking about you in terms of the way you play. And Vlad Nemestikov agreed that he's seen, some real changes with Cole Perfetti in terms of his approach and his mindset. And look, such a huge part of this game is between the ears, right? Like, yes, there's the physical part of hockey, but what goes on in your head can sometimes be your biggest opponent. And I think Cole Perfetti is really starting to figure it out. And the Jets are better for it. And yeah, that second line, like, they had a great road trip. They really did. And if anything, they're a little snake bit. Like, they've been producing, but my goodness, they could have had a few more the other night. It just seemed like every time they were on the ice, good things were happening. But yeah, the list doesn't start and end with Cole Perfetti. I just think up and down the lineup, David Gustafsson, who I think a week or two ago on this show, it might have been right after Lowry got hurt, that I said that he's a guy I'm really interested to see what he can do with a bit more opportunity. The Swedish Adam Lowry, as he was dubbed when he was drafted, that's what he was dubbed as. And if he could follow the trajectory of Adam Lowry's career, my goodness, the Jets would be thrilled with that. So, like, Gustafsson's been really good. Like you said, Kupari, I mean, go up and down the lineup. You have a hard time finding guys that aren't, playing some role, whether it's on the score sheet or just doing the little things, blocking shots. And how good has Dylan Sandberg been? My goodness. There's another guy who, you know, he had a tough game. He had a really tough game in Utah. Like, that was maybe the worst game we've seen Dylan Sam, and it was so out of character for him. But my goodness, has he ever responded to that? And if he can start to add a little bit of offense, as you know, and he's finding great times to jump into the play. Part of it is the environment the Jets have and the system. They want their D very active, and we've seen other D, Brendan Dillon last year, Dylan DeMello, like guys have career years. I'll tell you who's not unhappy to see Dylan Sandberg adding a little more offense, his agent, because if that's the one thing that would maybe keep his AAV down, would be that he doesn't produce a lot of offense. But if he has that as well in his toolkit, it's a good thing the salary cap is going up, because the Jets might need it when it comes to Sandberg and some of their other players.
Yeah, I was going to get to the salary cap increase and how it'll affect the Jets, you know, shortly in this conversation, but wanted to touch on today's practice. Feels like Four Nations fever is hitting the Jets. Morrissey wearing his pants. You're posting pictures here of Connor Hellebuck's.
It's a pretty sweet-looking mask. A big bald eagle. Now, I know I had somebody on social media say they don't understand why Hellebuck is flaunting his mask at this time, given what's going on in the world. First of all, folks, he's not flaunting it. He was wearing it at practice because, like all goaltenders, you want to get used to a new piece of equipment. This wasn't a case where he wrapped himself in an American flag and was doing laps on the ice. He's wearing his helmet that he's going to wear to represent his country, and it's a beautiful looking helmet for sure. He wasn't interesting. I thought he might be breaking in some new pads today as well as some of the other goaltenders who are playing in that tournament have, but he was not. And so I don't know. Yeah, there's the helmet sitting in his stall, and there's the above view. You see the bald eagle. You know, so I don't know what the pad situation is, because goalies are very finicky about their pads. But yeah, guys were breaking in their pants, and you know, it's an interesting time for the Jets, isn't it? Because like they just finished a stretch. That game in Washington was 3 straight weeks of playing every other day, literally every other day. I think they played 10 times in 19 days. They're now in a stretch, very early in a stretch, where they're going to play 2 games over the next 20 days. There is a lot of downtime coming up, not so much for Hellebuck, Morrissey, and Kyle Connor, who will get 3 or 4 games in at the Four Nations. But even these 2 games this week are kind of spread out, right? They played Saturday, they flew home late Saturday night, they had the full day off yesterday, practice today, play tomorrow, and then they don't play till Friday. So you'd expect the energy levels to be high for Winnipeg. And I do wonder, one of the things I'm writing about today is, you know, you look at the standings right now, Remus. The Jets have played 54 games. There's no team in the NHL that's played more than Winnipeg. A few teams have also played 54. The Jets will be at 56 as of Friday. They only have 26 games left. And we're in early February. There are some teams right now that have played like 50, 51, 52. Those teams are going to have a much busier schedule coming out of the Four Nations break than Winnipeg. And that's where the Jets are really in a good spot. Like, not only have they absolutely made hay and built up a bit of a buffer now when it comes to first in the division, first in the conference, but they'll also get a little more rest than some of their opponents. And, you know, some of those teams who are going to be pushing for playoff spots, which the Jets, they don't have to worry about that. They're going to be running on fumes by the time they get into late March and early April. And the Jets won't have to worry about that. Now, there's always the debate about, you know, Rask and Ross. I just think the Jets are in a prime position here to kind of take advantage. Although I did ask Scott Arniel today, like, I wondered if you're Winnipeg and you're just absolutely rolling, right? 6 straight wins, you almost wish the break wasn't coming up. Like, you want to just keep playing. And, you know, he conceded that obviously things are going well, but the injuries are piling up a little bit. Lowry, Barron, there's some other guys that had close calls and whatnot. So all things being considered, I think the Jets are happy that the break is coming. They'll obviously want to try and go out with 2 more strong performances this week and maybe turn a 6-game winning streak into an 8-gamer heading into the Four Nations break.
Yeah, the Jets, they only got 2 back-to-backs the rest of the year. And they already played, you know, they had that tough stretch in November. Yeah. They've already got it over with. You said played more games than anyone. That just means you get a lighter schedule. And they've won more than any other team. Like, the points percentage is second highest in the league, so it's going to be tough for other teams to keep up. As far as practice today, we did see some paper transactions. Parker Ford and Lambert sent down. They're back today. Talk about players making an impact. Parker Ford coming in and scoring in his first game. But I mean, as far as lines go, nothing much to report. They keep winning and
absolutely the status quo. Parker Ford was back up after the 1-day reassignment. People may say, well, why'd they send them down to the Moose yesterday? I think it's actually interesting and telling. The Jets are trying to bank every penny that they can. And they have a lot of accrued cap space. They're going to have even more come March 7th. And why is this important? Well, the more cap space you have, the more aggressive, the bigger the swing you can potentially make at the trade deadline. And, you know, the fact that they just papered those guys yesterday, just to call them back up today, like, that tells you they are aware of the importance of every dollar. They're not doing that to be cheap, to be clear. They're not doing this so they can just literally save money. They're doing this because they're trying to put themselves in the best position to weaponize some cap space. And, you know, that's really interesting going forward. But yeah, they were back up because obviously Lowry and Barron, they will not be back this week. The hope certainly is that those guys could be ready to go when they get back in action on February the 22nd. So, you know, when they papered them down, they only had 11 healthy forwards. They called the 2 up. Looks like Brad Lambert will again be the healthy scratch at forward tomorrow, and Billy Hainela and Hayden Fleury will again be the healthy scratches on the blue line. And I know there's hand-rigging out there. At the risk of violating my own personal, I'm not going to talk about Logan Stanley's rule. I know Scott Arniel said that there's going to be a rotation and all that. That was before they rattled off 6 straight wins. And whether you like it or not, I know some don't like it, that's the reason. Scott Arniel's not going to make a change to the lineup at this point. Logan Stanley's in. I thought Stanley's been fine the last few games. You know, certainly the Jets have been trying to shelter him a little bit. And, you know, they just got through a road trip where they went 3-0, played a couple of really good opponents, and, you know, everything went fine. So, yeah, that looks like the same lineup. The one thing that'll be interesting to see here, Remo, is what they do with the goaltending situation. You mentioned only 2 back-to-backs. So what, I believe Eric Comrie's now, at 12 starts? So I figured 20 starts was probably the target at the beginning of the year. Like, you know, you have 82 games. Connor Hellebuyck, we know he loves to play, but I figured something like 62 and 20 would be the breakdown. And, you know, his 62 is going to be more like 65 or 66 when you factor in 4 Nations. I don't know if he'll play every game, but he'll probably play at least a couple, depending on what happens with the U.S. And then you want him fresh for the playoffs. And, you know, the Jets, ideally, they want to play at least 16 playoff games if they want to win 16 playoff games this spring. So how do they get Eric Comrie to 20? They're at 12. And they have, 28 games left. Is Eric Comrie playing 8 of the final 28 when they only have, like you said, 2 back-to-back? So there's 2. Where are the other 6 starts coming? Well, this is just a guess. I think one of them is probably going to come on Friday. I would not be surprised if after tomorrow night, Carolina's a very good team. They're up there in the top 5 or 6. I suspect Connor Hellebuck gets the net tomorrow. I would not be surprised if the Jets then tell Connor Hellebuck, all right, put your feet up and don't worry about Friday, just focus on the tornado. I also wouldn't be surprised if coming out of the break, that one-game road trip to St. Louis on the 22nd, I also wouldn't be surprised if Eric Comrie gets that game as well. So you'd essentially give Comrie 2 straight games, albeit spread, over 2 weeks. And you're giving Connor Hellebuck, even though he's not technically getting the same break as everybody because of Four Nations, you would build in a bit of a break for him. So I still don't know exactly how they get to 20 with Comrie. But again, that may be a product of where the Jets are. If they can keep rolling and they have a comfortable lead on top of the division and potentially on top of the conference, I suppose that gives them a little more comfort in maybe dialing Hellebuck's workload back a little bit. But we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, Connor's Hellebuck's games played watch, something we'll be paying attention to. Four Nations, it's only 4 games maximum if you make the final. 3 round robin games. I imagine he would get 2. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. We are seeing a lot of trades around the NHL.
Yeah.
Mikko Rantanen dealt, JT Miller dealt, and then they made another trade. How's I think the Four Nations, Four Nations Cup here coming up in the break. Teams are treating that as a bit of a first trade deadline, with the second one coming March 7. And what do you think Kevin Cheveldayoff is going to do? Should we be on trade watch here this week?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And when I sat down with Kevin Cheveldayoff a couple weeks ago in Denver, I asked him, this was before these trades, and there was also the big Philly Calgary trade the other night as well.
That happened too, yeah.
4 players involved in that one. And so I wondered if that might be the case, because again, you look at games played, like teams have played more games right now at this time of year than they normally would, because the schedule is condensed, because there's going to be that 2-week break. And if you're a team and you're paying a premium for, potentially a rental, let's say you're giving up a first rounder for a guy that, like Rantanen, you don't know if you're going to re-sign him. Wouldn't you want to get that player in? Like, every additional game you could have him on your roster makes the price that you paid a little more palatable. It's like what the Jets did last year with Sean Monahan. And so Kevin Cheveldayoff acknowledged that certainly could happen, and now we're seeing that it is happening. It hasn't happened yet for Winnipeg. I think a couple things regarding the Jets here, that I wouldn't be holding my breath on a trade, in the next few days. Or I do think the Jets are going to be patient and probably wait closer to the deadline. One reason is the cap situation, and as mentioned, they're accruing space. I think another thing to keep an eye on is the waiver situation. And Kevin Cheveldayoff mentioned last year when they acquired Sean Monahan, there was an acquisition cost. They were already at a full roster, and the rosters don't expand until the trade deadline. You can't exceed 23 until March 7th. So if you make a deal today, you still have to abide by the roster limitation. And what was the acquisition cost last year? They put Declan Chisholm on waivers because of the Monahan addition. And of course, Chisholm was picked up by Minnesota, and we know that there's been a lot of hand-wringing over that. The Jets right now, yes, they got 2 guys injured, but I certainly don't think on the blue line there is an appetite to put anyone on waivers. Even though they're not using Ville Heinola and Hayden Fleury right now, this is a team, again, that envisions itself playing deep into the spring. They may need all those guys. They don't want to lose a defenseman to another team for nothing. So if you're the Jets, you have to weigh you know, certainly if there's a player available today that you have your eyes on and you can get the deal done, then sure, that's what happened with Monahan last year. The Jets were willing to pay the potential price of losing someone. But I think this year they are being very careful. I also think they're not desperate at all. Like they are operating from a position of strength. Sometimes desperate teams do desperate things, and that's when mistakes get made. The Jets are in a position where they can be patient. They can wait and see what the market looks like, and they can probably wait a little closer to the deadline itself. That way, they'll have the cap space to have an expanded roster. Again, you could have 30 players on your roster after March 7th as long as you are cap compliant. That's the only hindrance. The 23 limit, that goes out the window. The Jets will have a lot of cap space. I just think right now with the roster limitation, they probably are a little more reluctant to make a move that ultimately could cost them an asset as a side effect.
Not ready yet.
What happens there? One thing we're going to see is the salary cap increase over the next 3 seasons. A lot of talk. How is this going to affect the Winnipeg Jets? They've been a cap team, and we know the dollar decreasing. I mean, what kind of effect is this going to have on the Winnipeg Jets roster? I mean, there's so many ways to go. You know, the free agents as well, where we were saying, hey, are they going to be able to keep, you know, re-sign Velarde and Sandberg while keeping Ehlers, Pionk, Iafallo? I mean, what does it mean for the roster? I guess in short term, but long term, will they be able to, you know, spend to the cap when it's what, 113 million USD?
Which, given the state of the dollar, is about what, 300 million Canadian.
Yeah, it's shooting up. I think it shot up a bit more than it was when they announced it last week.
Indeed, yeah, and that's, you know, again, Winnipeg is a small market by NHL standards. They have the smallest building, and we know attendance has been an issue, which obviously relates to revenue. Yes, they have a very, very, very rich owner, one of the richest men in the country, in David Thompson. But there's been no indication that, you know, he's not treating the Jets as a charity. But we know the Jets have been a cap team, regardless of what the cap has been. And that's part of a pledge, a promise that they made to the likes of Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck and, you know, Blake Wheeler before that, to this core, that they are going to be competitive. There's been zero interest or appetite in a rebuild or a teardown, and I don't expect that to continue. And so on one hand, the salary cap rise is very good news for the Jets, as it pertains potentially to, Nikolai Ehlers, what happens with him, Dave Velarde's next contract, Dylan Sandberg's next contract, Kyle Connor's next contract. He's only a year away, and he's one of the premier goal scorers in the league. I don't think he's going to want to absolutely cash in on, you know, what could be one final massive swing by him. The good news for the Jets is the cap situation and where they're at gives hope that they can. There's no player necessarily that they would have to just walk away from because they couldn't afford him. Now, they may have strategic reasons for not re-signing everybody. You know, you have guys you want to potentially try and make room for in your system, you know, prospects, things like that. And you want to make sure that those players are ready, that the path isn't completely blocked. But yeah, purely from a financial standpoint, there would be no reason to suggest the Jets can't, quote, keep the band together if that's what they want to do. It does raise an interesting question, though, about the business side of operations at Tudor and what that looks like exactly, given, you know, there's been attendance issues. And obviously the dollar is a huge factor. That's where things like revenue sharing will be very interested to see, and I do wonder if the Jets would start to get a much bigger piece of the pie, you know, to help keep them going. But yeah, it's a really interesting situation. I know there's been some talk that there could be teams that have their own in-house, you know, cap ceiling that will be different than what the NHL's is. Could the Jets be one of them? I suppose. I just don't think from everything we know about this ownership group, they want nothing more than to win a Stanley Cup. And they've been willing to spend to the cap to try and accomplish that. And so just because the cap is going to rise significantly, I have to think that they will want to, quote unquote, keep up with the Joneses, if they feel that gives them the best chance to win. So yeah, it's a very interesting storyline to keep an eye on for sure. One that, there's probably some mixed emotions. Like internally, they're probably thrilled that, hey, we could afford to keep all these players, but the offshoot is, what's that going to look like? And, how are we going to accomplish that in terms of our revenue streams? And that's where certainly maybe some of the other things that True North had going on with regards to other projects, other investments that they've made are certainly a big part of, it's not just the hockey team, right? It's not just a standalone business. There's other parts of this, and that's probably a very good thing.
Yeah, I did some quick math over the weekend, Mike. I think a lot of the part of the salary cap going up is, well, first of all, if it's going up, it means everyone's making money. So that's a plus. And additionally, the TV contract, Canadian, U.S., coming up in the next 2 to 3 years. So the Canadian deal, $5.2 billion over 12 years. I think, so I average it like $13.54 million per team. They got 2 different U.S. contracts, TNT and ESPN. I added that up. Now I don't know how much the Canadian teams and U.S. teams take proportionally from the Canadian-U.S. deals, but the U.S. deal was about $410 million per year from ESPN and $225 million per year from TNT over 32 teams. That's about 19.84. So 33.38 million per team for national TV. Now I was reading in Forbes article from December saying, when those deals renew, they could be double or triple what they're getting now. So on 113 million cap, double 33 million, that's 66 million. Triple 90 million. 99. So we're gonna wait and see what those national deals are, because we're seeing Amazon, they're in with Canada. I don't know if they're gonna get more, or in the US, Netflix is trying to get into sports. So it seems like these deals, they're trying to, the NHL is trying to move their revenue of the pie from, hey, local ticket sales, local TV, TV deals to more national deals. So I think those numbers certainly reflect that.
And here's another thing to consider too in the coming years. The NHL has made no bones about the fact that it's likely going to expand. Not relocate, expand. And that means expansion fees. What did Utah just pay, Remus? Was it $1 billion?
Yeah, something like that, right?
Yeah. So, and I think the idea is, they just came out with a new valuation. Aren't the Jets valued at $1 billion, and they're near the bottom of the league? The value of franchises is skyrocketing. And as such, expansion fees to get into the league, whether it's 2 more teams, or I've even seen it floated that they could get to 36 eventually. And we can debate till we're blue in the face about whether that's ultimately good for the game itself to add 4 more teams. It's probably going to happen, and it's for the reasons that some of what you just outlined. TV contracts, big markets with big TV bases, viewership. So, and what the owners get, that's money straight into their pockets when they get a expansion fee. Everybody gets their share. If you have 2 to 4 more teams joining the league here in the not so distant future, and what that would bring, there's an additional revenue stream as well. So yeah, I don't think anybody, including the Jets, they won't be in a position to be crying poverty. Again, the whole CBA, this whole system, the whole idea of the salary cap itself is tied into revenue. If everybody collectively wasn't healthy enough to the point where this could happen, it would not be happening. And the idea is no team gets left behind in the sense that they simply can't afford to keep up. So while the numbers may be eye-popping and jarring, and certainly the dollar situation isn't helping, I don't believe that this is a critical situation in any way for the Jets. And as I say, you could spin it into a very positive one. If they want to keep their core intact, if they want to go long term with some of these guys that will have deals coming up, there wouldn't be hindrance to do that.
Yeah, so we will stay tuned to those TV deals, and it's something else going to affect our watching habits because it's one game in the NHL tonight, and it's on Amazon Prime. There's an adjustment this year with the 4 Jets games on Mondays on Amazon. I do have the Forbes article from December 24. They have the Jets valued $1.05 billion. That's the 31st of 32 teams in terms of value, operating income. I mean, these are Forbes numbers. I don't know where they're getting it from. I think it's projected, but they have their operating income $9 million. And yeah,
what did they pay Remus in 2011? Was it 185 million?
Yeah, it was. I mean, let me pull up. I see people in chat. Bart Oman saying 110 for the team and 60 million relocation fee. So, you know, in terms of, I mean, that's unrealized gains, but yeah, they're doing pretty well, and it does make you think when they look at expansion. You know, they certainly position themselves to get in at the right time because, you know, they're looking at big cities. I see Kevin Weeks posting pictures of Atlanta every day on X with the eyes emoji, whatever that means. Houston, I don't know. You heard about Kansas City for a while, and I don't know if Quebec City, if it's going to come true for them as they, you know, the dollar, and they're looking at all. So, I mean, credit to True North and the Jets for being able to pounce when they did, because it certainly paid off for the city and paid off for them. But, you know,
and that's where, if you're the Jets, I mean, you'd love to obviously have a long, productive playoff run this year that, you know, and because the Jets, like, let's face it, they needed this kind of season this year, coming off last year. Obviously, the attendance issues. You had Gary Bettman coming to town. Bit of a public alarm being sounded. The best thing that could have happened for the Jets is to have an on-ice product that is winning far more than it's losing. And, you know, I know there's some people that they're waiting to see how the playoffs go, and that's ultimately going to tell the tale on this season. But certainly, if you are a local fan and you've been coming to home games this year, their home record is as good as anyone's in the league. It might be the best in the league. And so, you know, you're getting pretty good bang for your buck, you know, when it comes to the product that you're seeing on the ice. And that's a big part of it, right? So, and I think for the Jets, they want to continue to try and ice a competitive team because they recognize that they can probably ill afford to have some lost seasons here, where, you know, things aren't going well. They need to remain competitive, and they're willing to spend to do that. And I think we're seeing the fruits of some of that labor, you know, happening right now before our very eyes.
Yeah, it's been incredible to watch the first place Winnipeg Jets. We'll be looking to see them take on Carolina, who's got Stanley Cup aspirations. Tomorrow, I think it should be a great one. Tomorrow night at Canada Life Center, and Friday, the last one before the break against the Islanders. It is the WST game. We'll be there with our group, WinnipegJets.com/WST. Great Friday night. So I think the building should be rocking. People are excited, and they should be, because we're just here, you know, for half hour, Mike, just talking about how great the Winnipeg Jets are. We didn't even touch on the power play. There's just too many things. Too many guys having career years. It's incredible.
Back up to 33.3% again, which is just, again, there's 28 games left. The Jets are on track for what literally would be a historically good power play if they can continue to convert 1 out of every 3 for the final 28 games. And it's not just the top unit anymore. The second unit is capitalizing, which that makes them kind of a dual threat. Yeah, I see, by the way, people may have missed this, the Islanders, they're going to be without Matt Barzell. So the Jets get a bit of a break in terms of what the Islanders will be getting. The Islanders have been red hot until last night. They had won 7 in a row. Carolina is always a good team, and I'm sure a lot of Winnipeggers will be keen to watch Seth Jarvis, the Mr. Four Nations. How about that? What a great story. It's still, I still sometimes, Remus, I think to myself, what would this Jets team look like if they had Seth Jarvis on their team right now. And I say that because Seth Jarvis was available at pick number 10 when they took Cole Perfetti. And then he was available at pick 11 and 12 as well for the two teams that followed Winnipeg before Carolina grabbed him at 13. Like, to me, and I'm a big fan of what Cole Perfetti does and his potential, but my goodness, wouldn't Seth Jarvis just be the kind of player that he would fit so seamlessly with the Jets, right? That ain't gonna happen now. Carolina's not letting him go anywhere. And we also get to see old friend Mikko Rantanen again. The Jets have already seen him 4 times. Remus, what's the record for one player playing? Because the Jets are actually going to see him 6 times because they hadn't played Carolina yet.
Oh my God!
So they're going to get Rantanen 6 times this year. Which, other than maybe the bubble season in the All-Canadian division, where COVID meant like you were kind of playing the same opponents all the time anyway, I can't imagine in a situation where, at least not in a modern NHL that's more than like 21 teams or 16 teams, where you face a player that many times. But such is the nature of the timing of the trade. Just when you think you've seen the last of Mikko Rantanen, because he's been traded out of your division, oh, by the way, you got to face him 2 more times still.
It's like when, didn't Monahan play 83 games?
He did.
Last year.
Inevitably, there's a few players, again, if they go to a team, and they get in the lineup right away, that can exceed the 82-game mark. I often wonder, like, that would be a fun clause if you're an agent just to negotiate in, like, throw the guy another 50 grand or something if he can play more than 82 regular season games. It almost feels like you deserve it, right?
Yeah.
Because
incredible.
The only way it's happening is if you're traded. So it almost be like, here's a little bit of extra scratch for the inconvenience of moving you in season.
Yeah, that was a solid thing that happened in the last 83 games played.
I like that.
Don't see that in Rantanen, playing the max possible against the Jets this year. Wonderful. Well, Mike, we're looking forward to reading the content you got coming up in the Winnipeg Free Press. You and Ken and the team there doing a great job, sending Ken on the road last week for Parker Ford's debut. Some great stuff came out of that, and I know you guys are doing a great job. So appreciate you taking the time to come on, and look forward to reading whatever's next in the future.
Right on, thanks for listening to the week.
Definitely will. There he is, Mike McIntyre. He's here. Read him the Free Press. He's on X, Blue Sky, at Mike McIntyre, WBG. We got Hustler with one more. We got a couple great guests coming up. Jesse Pollock of Bar Down and TSN, and Jeff Patterson on the big JT Miller trade. We'll take a look at another team around the NHL. But first, here's us.
A big cheers from our friends at Winnipeg's favorite local brewery, Little Brown Jug.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
Hey, folks, not only is Boston Pizza your best place in town to gather with your gang for Winnipeg Jets hockey games with pick-a-player contests and chance to win great prizes and swag from Royal Sports, not only is Boston Pizza your number one spot to get together for NFL playoff games and all the big sporting events in the lounge, January is also the month where every single day is Pasta Tuesday at Boston Pizza. Enjoy until the end of the month. Great deals on all your favorite pasta dishes at your local Boston Pizza with Pasta Tuesday promos every single day, 7 days a week at your local Boston Pizza. Pop in today, and of course, if you can't make it or it's a little too cold to get outside, you can always get it hot and fresh to your door. The great taste of Boston Pizza by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. And a huge shout out to our friends at Royal Sports for 40 years plus. family owned and operated, the #1 hockey and sports superstore in town. If you play hockey or have a hockey player in the family, you probably already know that Royal Sports is your one-stop shop for full equipment, goalie gear, sticks, skates, right down to stick tape, pucks, and skate sharpening. But I will remind you, as we look outside and the river trail is absolutely mint right now, many people not necessarily needing an expensive pair of hockey skates, just want to go out and make the most of Winnipeg winter. Royal is the best place in town for some affordable recreational skate options that won't set you back the same amount as a pair of the blades from the pros. Get on down there. While you're at it, check out all the best selections of Winnipeg Jets merchandise, Bomber gear, NFL, NHL, you name it, they got it. Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. You get to check out all the cool stuff on the Kings Skate Snow Surfside. You get to follow on Instagram at Royal Sports Winnipeg for the latest merchandise drops, specials, and sale information. Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. They sponsor of Winnipeg Sports Talk.
There's Hess. He's coming back from Costa Rica. He'll be back tomorrow, bringing all the hot takes. I know he mentioned Royal Sports Show to Greg and Royal, sending us this video, an unboxing. It's all the new Four Nations gear. We got a Canada hoodie, all the jerseys, Canada, U.S., Sweden, Finland. So check out our Royal Sports on Pembina. Check that out over the weekend. The hat rack of Winnipeg Jets hats and other teams, every league. Absolutely incredible, unmatched anywhere. So giant, basically it's like the Costco of sports stores. Hockey equipment, sticks, everything. Incredible. Well, here, the Winnipeg Jets, they're in first place, and who better to chat with than Jesse Ball? You've seen him on the Bar Down YouTube channel and on TSN as well, Jets Intermissions, and he joins me right now. Jesse, thanks so much. I'm so glad you could make time to join me here today on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I know we've been back and forth a little about making this happen, and just scheduling-wise, I'm glad that we were finally able to make it work.
Yeah, busy doing a ton of content for Bar Down. We see you on Intermission Jets broadcasts, TSN. Hardworking guys who appreciate it. It's great to connect. I mean, man, think about the Jets weekend. Huge game on Saturday. #1 Jets versus #1 Washington. Incredible game and one incredible run. The Jets are on 6-game win streak. First place in the NHL. I mean, it's pretty amazing to watch, isn't it?
It is. That game was electric on Saturday. Like, could not have asked for a better game. That Sully by Morris, he was also unbelievable. Bangs on the glass. It was almost as if he was like going for a flyby leap bangs on the glass. Then he's just like, all right, boys, let's go. Let's get out of here. So, that was a little preview to the Stanley Cup final. I don't think a lot of people were complaining. Jets are just getting it done right now. It's amazing to see, giving Winnipeg some cred.
I think it's Josh Morrissey banging on the glass saying, hey, NHL world, hey, media, we're here. We're the Winnipeg Jets. We're #1. Start paying attention. I mean, you might want to go bang on the door of the editors at TSN who only have the Jets 3rd on the power rankings, but people always complain to us. I'm like, you know what? The only power rankings that matter are the NHL standings.
I don't make those for the record. But we have a great team of people that do, and even the Jets being in the top 3, I think is pretty amazing.
I mean, when you watch the team this year, I mean, what are you loving the most, or what's impressed you the most about the Winnipeg Jets season so far that has them in first place?
The top line has been unbelievable. There was obviously talk about Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele, potentially not vibing on the top line, and they've both been phenomenal. I mean, it's pretty crazy to think that Mark Scheifele's not on Team Canada. But what a year those guys are having. Gabe Velarde has been just an absolute beast for the Jets this year. Best line in the league this year, which is pretty crazy to think about. So I'm really, really curious to see how it translates to the playoffs. But what I like about that line is that there's a lot of size on it. And yeah, I mean, the Jets are getting it done. If you look at their centers, they're relatively nothing to write home about, and we're still just finding ways to produce. So, yeah, I mean, our top line, and for what our defense is too, they've been playing pretty well as well. And of course, last but not least, Hellebuck has just been. I mean, it goes without saying because I expected this out of him, but he's just been on another level this year. I think he's the MVP of the league, and what a year it's been for the Jets.
Yeah, Hellebuck, you almost like just expect him to do this, and you're just like, yeah, he's the best goalie in the league, leading in goals against average, leading in save percentage, the top line, among the best. It is crazy when you look at the goal scoring leaders in the NHL. Mark Scheifele leading Canadians in goals, tied with Sam Reinhart at 31, not on Team Canada. Disappointing, but we do get to see Josh Morrissey. What an incredible season he's had. I know you sat down with him for some features for the Jets intermission, which I loved, showing him the old sticks. I mean, what was that like, recording that video? And I mean, how about his play? I mean, got to be looking forward to seeing him at the Four Nations for Team Canada.
Yeah, I love Josh Morrissey. I'm a huge fan of his. On the ice, such a talented player. I think he's probably one of the more underappreciated defensemen in the league for a couple of reasons. But, I think if he was playing here in Toronto, it may be a bit of a different story. But he's just so steady, doesn't make mistakes. Every time you see him do like a spin move on the blue line in the offensive zone, you're like, oh my God, this is insane. And unbelievable shot. And off the ice, Josh is, from my experiences with him, just a really, really good guy. We do the called out videos, like at intermission, you'll see them as well. And one thing that a lot of the players said in last year's called out video is that one of them was the guy who always picks up the check. And apparently Josh Morrissey's name did get tossed around for that. And obviously it helps when you're making $6.5 million or whatever it is he's making. But, still, I mean, he just seems like he's the ultimate leader. And he's always been very nice to me. I just saw a post today of him too. Like, I think he was working with the True North Foundation or something at Corning Community Center. And I'm like, it's not even, I see this stuff. I'm not surprised because he's just such a leader in the community as well. And I'm just really proud. It sounds weird, but I'm really proud to have Josh Morrissey as a Winnipeg Jet.
Yeah, he's always been a great guy in the community. He's done stuff with us, done stuff with Dream Factory, and yeah, he was coaching with the True North Youth Foundation this weekend. A lot of talk about trades this weekend, the trade deadline coming up a little over a month away. Do you think the Jets need to add? And if so, what do you think they should be looking at before March 7?
It's weird because the Jets are the best team in the league right now, but the Jets were also pretty solid last year. And obviously we slowed down, and then we got hot towards the end of the year, and then we played Colorado. And I just wonder, even though we're this great regular season team, are the Jets equipped to make a playoff run right now? And it's hard to say because, based off of last year and how we played against Colorado, there were some issues with our roster from a playoff perspective. That said, I think it's been another year. Some of the newer guys have had a chance to gel a little bit more with the team. Velarde's looking incredible. Perfetti has been taking a nice step lately. I think if the Jets are going to make a playoff run, Cole Perfetti is going to be a huge X factor for the team. But again, I think the playoffs are a different beast from the regular season, and I do think the Jets should make a couple moves. It's so hard when your team is the best in the league. You don't really want to mess with chemistry, but I think we're going to need some defensive depth, specifically on our last pairing. I actually really like Kane Fleury, for the record. I think he's a great player. But I do think that we need some help. Dylan DeMello is so steady, solid. You kind of wonder, is he really that first line defensive pairing guy that you need for your team? Him and Morrissey play so well together, though, so it's hard to I can't really imagine them being separated, but maybe just some more size on the back end and a skilled size player, because I think we just could use a little more depth there. And I obviously am curious about our second line center spot. That's just a spot that seems to just always be an issue with us. And, you know, Nemeskov's obviously been great, and Lowry, when he's healthy, has done well in that second line. But I'm sure the Jets are going to be looking at someone like Brock Nelson to fill that second line center spot. I feel like he would be a really nice addition there. But hey, we'll have to wait and see what happens. Chevy's the GM, and I trust him.
Chevy, when moves need to be made, he's certainly done a good job at deadlines in the past addressing. And Brock Nelson, I see him on the TSN trade bait list. Well, he's number one because JT Miller is number one. He got traded. Brock Nelson, number two. And yeah, some size on defense, someone who can move the puck quickly. And I see what you're feeling, Jesse. A little conflicted. I mean, the Jets are number one. They were number one last year, but, you know, the playoff success wasn't there. So you want to enjoy it, but at the same time, there's a little scarring there from the last two playoffs getting bounced in round one.
Yeah, I mean, if the Jets play the Avalanche, let's say, in the first round, and this is nothing against the Jets, it's just the Avalanche are such a good team, and for them to be a wild card team, like, do you really feel that good about that matchup as a Jets fan? I don't feel good about that at all.
I feel like last year they were very overwhelmed by the Avalanche, and I don't know, I feel like they've really taken that to heart and taken steps saying, hey, we're not going to let this opportunity slip away from us again. And they've come out with, you know, just some attitude to get revenge on whatever happened to them in the playoffs last season. They know that wasn't their game. They did not play Winnipeg Jets hockey, and they've seemingly created this identity where they're consistent every night, and it's been incredible to watch. But that's why getting first place is so important in the Central. You know, you'd rather play the second wild card, which is Calgary or Vancouver probably, rather than Colorado. But I mean, Colorado, are they the same team without Mikko Rantanen? I mean, the trades in all sports, NBA and NHL the last week or two has been crazy. But how about these deals we've seen?
The last 24 hours.
Yeah.
The last weekend. Oh my goodness.
Like JT Miller, Rantanen, how crazy are some of these trades? And Luka Doncic. I had to look if that one was real. Like, I'm like double confirming accounts. Like now, like it's been wild, the trades here over the last week and a half.
I'm still waiting.
Yeah, it's been overwhelming, but you know, reminds us that this is why we love working in sports.
Yeah. Hey, one of our biggest shows last year was the Monahan trade. So we'll wait and see what happens with Shovel Day Off at the deadline. You know, Jesse, I love all your content at Bar Down YouTube channel. Incredible. You know, what are some of the highlights for you over the last bit? Because you had Bruce Boudreau coach the Bar Down hockey team, which was hilarious. And I mean, he did a great job. You went up against a USHL team, spotted them, like 20 goals? And then, or they spotted, or what were you, started up like 20 nothing, and they had to come back, and then went up against a 10 under 10 AAA team. I mean, how much fun are you having recording that great content? Seems to be getting a well received as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a blast. I think the nice thing about Bar Down, we have a very tight-knit team, and like all these videos, it's the ultimate team effort, which is just like so great. So many different people are contributing to these videos, which is just awesome. And yeah, I mean, I personally think the U10 video is probably the best video we've ever made for Bar Down. Like that, I would go that far to say that. It was such a well done video. So many different people coming together to make it happen, and it was just a blast. The Muskegon video was a ton of fun, and there was a guy named Ezra Janello who does like all of the broadcasting, everything, runs their social, everything for this USHL team. Really give a lot of credit to him for having us down there and help making that shoot work. And then the Bruce Boudreau one was pretty funny because we were going to Muskegon for the U20 shoot, and you know, it came to my attention that Bruce Boudreau had coached the Muskegon Lumberjacks back in the day. So we FaceTimed Bruce for the video, and then after I just messaged the producer at TSN. I was like, do you think Bruce would like maybe want to come coach one of our beer league games? And he was like, you may as well ask. So I got in touch with Bruce, and I don't really think he knew what was going on when he got to the game. I tried to explain to him as clearly as I could what was happening, but he showed up, and you know, I don't know how familiar he is with like the YouTube game, but he obviously was a huge hit, and yeah, we've just been having a lot of fun. We have some other fun shoots coming up as well, which will be a great time, and yeah, we're just trying to kind of up the game with each video. So yeah, having a blast.
Man, my favorite was when there were some kids who saw you and Bruce Boudreau, and they got Bruce Boudreau to take a picture of you with them. and
I know. I think your dad would think that I should be taking a picture of you with Bruce.
Yeah, exactly. But and so, you know, coming up next week, we haven't had this for a long time. 4 nations: Canada, USA, Sweden, Finland. Got to be really excited for that, although maybe a little conflicted seeing Connor Hellebuck in a Team USA jersey. What's your excitement level at for the 4 nations?
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. Anytime you can see best on best playing, like when's the last time we saw this? It's so long ago. Yeah, it's going to be a nice little taste too for what the Olympics are going to be like next year, which is really the Super Bowl for hockey fans for international competition. And yeah, I'm super pumped. You know, obviously I hope that the Jets do well. I'm really hopeful that none of them get injured. That's something that you think about in the back of your head when these tournaments happen. But you know what? These are very special and valuable experiences for the players, and yeah, it's going to be unbelievable. How are teammates going to treat each other at these tournaments is what I'm really curious about too. So, you know, like Austin Matthews, for example, will be playing against Mitch Marner and William Nylander and all this stuff. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. Sorry to bring up the Leafs.
No, hey, you're in Toronto. I'm sure you get a kick out of rubbing the Jets' success and all the Maple Leafs fans. I do enjoy all that aspect of your content as well.
Of course, got a rep. And then you have all these people saying, "Oh, when was the last time the Jets won a cup?" Like I have like these 20-year-old kids saying it to me. I was like, "Buddy, like, are you really gonna go there? Your dad probably wasn't even born yet the last time the Leafs won the cup." Ridiculous.
You mentioned the Olympics being the Super Bowl of hockey, but the actual Super Bowl this weekend. I know you do a ton of work with NFL Canada. How fired up are you for Chiefs and Eagles? And you got a pick for us on Super Sunday.
Oh, very, very pumped. And if you actually check NFL Canada's Instagram from the beginning of the playoffs, I called that this would be the Super Bowl. And I'm not going to go against who my pick was, as unsexy as it is. I'm taking Chiefs. I had Chiefs over Eagles to win it all from the start of the playoffs. And, you know, every year it's like people would find reasons to doubt Tom Brady. Like, oh yeah, Patriots they're not going to win. They're not going to win. But most of the time, you know, it was the Patriots that ended up winning, and Mahomes ended up winning. So I'm going with KC. They know how to get it done. They've been there. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if the Eagles won. It was a really close game the last time these two played, and I want to see the Eagles win, but I'm just not doubting Mahomes.
Hey, I'm with you. They seem, you know, the spread very close. Chiefs favored by 1.5, but the Chiefs, they're always in close games. They always find a way to make one more play to get it done. You saw that against the Bills, and can't wait for what should be an exciting game, even if, you know, you're not as excited about seeing the same teams from a couple years ago. And I know there's a number of people who are sick of the Chiefs' success, but I think you got to appreciate the greatness that we're watching. Jesse, we finally made it work. Thank you so much for taking the time. Looking forward to seeing whatever great content you have cooking up at Bar Down and on, you know, TSN and your own personal Instagram. So thanks again for making the time, and hopefully we do this again soon.
For sure. Thanks for having me, Reem. Keep up the good stuff, and let's go Jets! Let's go!
There he is, Jesse Pollock with Bar Down, TSN, Jets intermission as well. Love that segment with Josh Morrissey going over the old sticks. I think Morrissey, I appreciated his knowledge. You know, I go to the store now. I don't know any of the new sticks, but if you ask me about sticks from like 25 years ago, I'll tell you every Easton one out there. We're going to talk with Jeff Patterson on the Canucks shortly, but first let's bring in Connor Rabchak. He's been waiting patiently. Connor, what's going on? Welcome back. How's it going?
Excellent. I've become stronger. Not ready yet.
Yeah. I think some of those sticks may have been older than you, Connor. At least they were definitely older than Brad Lambert, the ones that he was showing off to Brad. But they're doing some great content on the Bar Down channel. We did have some, I guess, Jets news. Kevin Cheveldayoff was on the 100%. Oh, I have to unmute you. Kevin Cheveldayoff. Darn. Yeah. I always do that. Kevin Cheveldayoff was on the 100% Hockey podcast with Darren Millard and John Shannon. And Nikolai Ehlers came up. A lot of talk about Ehlers. He's an unrestricted free agency. Well, are the Jets going to keep him? Are they going to sign him? Or are they going to trade him? Here is Kevin Cheveldayoff when asked about Nikolai Ehlers.
Not ready yet.
My plan is to hopefully lift a cup with him some point in time down the road here. So, again, we've got lots of guys that, obviously from a free agent standpoint, both UFA and RFA, that we'll have to sort out over a period of time. But, first and foremost, it's all about winning right now. And we had this situation last year, too, where we had several guys that were up for potential UFA. We were able to keep some of them. Some of them went in different directions, but for various different reasons. So when it comes to that, for us, I want the focus to be totally on winning, and that's kind of how we've approached things.
There's Kevin Cheveldayoff, Jets GM, on the 100% Hockey. That's on YouTube with Darren Millard and John Shannon. And Connor, to me it sounds like, they're going to try to take a run here and sign Ehlers. The cap is going up. They traditionally have signed their homegrown players. We just saw Shifley and Connor when you thought they were going to be on the move. All the rumors were out there. It seems like they're going to try to lift a cup with Ehlers and then keep him under contract. Is that what you took from that?
That is what I took from that. And just after that clip ended, John Shannon then asks Cheveldayoff if a deadline can spur action. We talk about that all the time, right? With the upcoming trade deadline, March 7th. And Kevin Cheveldayoff basically said no. And then, or if we have the clip, yeah, let's just get to it.
So he said, okay,
that's where I was taking it.
This is the conversation that we've had saying, hey, you know what, could Ehlers be traded before the deadline? You don't want to lose the guy for nothing, right? And John Shannon straight up asked Cheveldayoff just that.
So you're not looking to move him before the 7th?
Yeah, no.
Okay. Because people will ask and people will talk. That's right. Right? You know that, Kevin.
People can talk. I guess from our perspective, if there's a chance to help us win, I guess you look at everything. But it's he's been part of our winning equation here this year, and looked him to be a big part of it.
Kevin Cheveldayoff again with Darren Millard, John Shannon, 100% Hockey. So there he is, Connor. We can scratch Ehlers off. He's not going to be on any trade bait lists, any trade watch boards, any big boards. He's not going anywhere, seems like.
I love that answer. I love that he's like, yeah, no. Like it's ridiculous to even propose that. Like, Nikolai Ehlers has been such a vital part to the best power play in NHL history, at least so far, right? At least as we sit here today, 33.3% best in NHL history would be if they finish the season that way. So if the Jets are going to go on a deep playoff run, they need Nikolai Ehlers on that power play, on their second line, playing well, playing at a high level. And yeah, Cheveldayoff goes, yeah, no, I'm not trading him. But I guess if there's a way to make the team even better, then you look at everything. But I've said for a long time that I see them, not striking a deal during the season and kind of keeping him as a self-rental. And Cheveldayoff's response to that, almost being like puzzled by the thought of trading him before the deadline, only reinforced that even further.
Yeah, podcast listeners can't really see his face there, but he's like, come on, guys, why are you even asking me this question here? So we'll see. We'll see.
I like how he goes, lots of people can talk, and we're the ones here talking about it. We're the ones
we can talk, yeah. We can talk. We can play fantasy hockey here with the Jets. We can look at Puckpedia and do all the things. Connor, it is the time of the show. We look at the cool bet lines. Let me pull them up here. There's only one game around the NHL tonight as I load you into the box here. There you go. There you go. One game in the NHL tonight on Amazon Prime. Predators minus 135 against the Senators. You'll be watching this one on Prime?
I love the Prime broadcast, so I'm gonna be checking this one out. This is a good game. Like the Predators, I believe, have won 5 straight games, or 4 of their last 5 or something, so they're kind of coming on. The Senators are in a playoff spot in the East, and they're fighting kind of for their playoff lives or looking to chase Toronto and the Atlantic. All the teams in the East are so close together, so this game, I mean, you see Ottawa on the road against Nashville, and the way Nashville's played this year, maybe you don't think that it would be a good game, but at this point in the season, I actually think it's a pretty exciting matchup, and not a bad one to have as the only game of the night tonight.
Ottawa just had the big beatdown on Minnesota. We all enjoyed that. Haven't seen anything on this Ryan Hartman in-person hearing. We are tuned. Season bets. The Jets are number 1 in the league, Connor. 15-1 for the Stanley Cup? What? I mean, how many teams are ahead of them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 teams? That's not right. So it seems like actually pretty good Val, if you ask me, right?
The Colorado Avalanche are ahead of them after trading away Mikko
Toronto?
Rantanen? Toronto? Come on. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
Come on.
Hey, that's good news. That's good news for us. I mean, it's good news. If you like value, then you can bet on the Jets to win the Cup 15-1. That's pretty wild. And, we did have someone in chat here saying, I'm not going to watch the Super Bowl. It's rigged. The Chiefs are going to win. Well, if you think it's rigged, what a great opportunity to place a wager on the Chiefs at minus 122. That's like, if you think it's rigged, that means it's guaranteed dollars. So the Chiefs, minus 122 on the money line, minus 1.5 favorites. You got your Super Bowl party planned here, Connor?
Super Bowl parties planned. My fantasy football league, the loser hosts every year, so
really?
I know where I'm going. Yeah, I know where I'm going.
Oh.
And yeah, it'll be fun, and I'm expecting a Chiefs win too. Not because it's rigged, just because that's what they do.
Yeah, that's just exactly. It's because what they do, and there's gonna be so many props. I mean, holy jeez, just where's the Gatorade color? Yes, first liquid poured purple. Green, yellow, lime, orange, blue, clear water, red, pink. I like correlating color of Gatorade with the team. So if you think the Chiefs, red plus 900. I don't even know. I just say that every year, but I actually haven't looked. I never win. Maybe I got to change my strategy for the Gatorade. You can even bet on, Connor, the position of the player to pour the liquid on the winning coach.
I'm still waiting.
Interesting.
If you think it's offensive player plus 120, defensive minus 115. I guess because usually they take a knee and the defense pours it on, or if it's a tag team plus 500.
Because I would think like the offensive line or like the big strong players that would lift the Gatorade and pour it, right? But if the offense is out there taking a knee for the win,
it could be final play of the game. A Hail Mary falls short or something, or what if it's like a missed field goal and the Chiefs win and both the offense and defense are out there? I think is that how you would win on plus 500?
I guess.
That's crazy.
Maybe.
Halftime, Kendrick Lamar first song. You got to lean on Kendrick Lamar first song?
He's going to come out firing with Not Like Us. Just get it out of the way right off the bat. Diss Drake in front of the entire country and move on with the rest of the performance. I don't know. But
that's minus 156 as the last song, but plus 400 to be the first song. I know the first Kendrick Lamar album. Oh, I like King Kunta plus 500. That's a good song. So we'll see. This is a halftime show. I'm not sure what to expect. Not like a huge Kendrick Lamar guy, but We'll see how it gets received. Who was the halftime last year? I don't remember. Do you know? I remember the Dr. Dre one from like that was a couple of years ago though.
Goodness, who was it last year? The Niners were in the Super Bowl. I guess I was so focused on the game.
Yeah, I again can't remember who was in the Super Bowl last year, but who was in it like 20, 30 years ago? I don't know. Michael Jackson, was that it? I have no idea. Touchdown score. You got first TD score. Saquon, Kelsey, Hurts was a big favorite. Kareem Hunt, Worthy. I don't know. What about Dallas Goedert? Plus 1401. First touchdown. That's always fun to bet on. Usher.
Yeah?
It was Usher, says Eric Torley.
Was it Usher?
Yeah, I think it was Usher.
Oh, yes, it was.
It was Usher.
I believe. Yeah. Okay, wait. Let's do this. Yeah.
It was Usher. So I don't know. Dallas. I've been taking Dallas.
It was
Goedert.
Usher. It was Usher.
Yeah. So I like. What about Noah Gray? Do we get a Noah Gray appearance? Pretty long shot here. Kenny Gainwell. Man, these are really down the list. So everyone's saying. But who's singing the anthem? I don't know. But do they have anthem? They have like I don't care about any of the game bets. I care about the ancillary stuff, like the anthem time. Yeah. But winner of the coin toss, length of the national anthem in seconds from first note sung to last note, 120.5. Over under. I don't have any leans on this, but maybe as the week goes on, someone will hear rehearsal or something and get tipped off.
You'll see a tweet with like an anonymous account say that they were at the rehearsal and it was 126 seconds, and then the line will move and it'll. This happens every Super Bowl. It's the best part.
I love betting on the anthem. I'm at our party. Like people are there with like their own timers, like cheering the anthem, because we always do like a group pool or something. Four Nations face off, the odds, futures. Oh man, look at this. We're looking forward. Tournament top goal scorer. Oh, these are kind of cool. Man, these are pretty long shot odds. And there's so many good, like Nathan McKinnon to lead in goals, 14-1. I don't know, McDavid 10-1. Like why not? Like why not?
That's interesting. The last time I looked at Cool Bet's Four Nations thing, all that was the winner, was the futures for the winner. So
Kyle Connor, 30-1 to lead the tournament in goal. I don't know. We don't know the lines, so
we need the lines.
It's tough to say, but I don't know. Like why not Kyle Connor at 30? Is he playing top line? So we don't know the lines yet. I think it's too early. But
where's Mark Scheifele? Where's his odds?
Yeah,
to lead the tournament goals. He's the leading goal scorer in the league going to the tournament, actually, because Draisaitl isn't going. He's German.
Yeah,
so
he's got the most.
Scheifele. You down there?
He's got the most goals of any player in the tournament. Yeah, that's right. I'm not sure. That's a good question. Guess he's not on the team. Tough one. That's a tough one. I guess they got top goal scorer on each team. Rantanen in the lead, Finland, Laine, Markov, Hintz. I'm curious who would be. You got Sweden. Okay, how about this one? The next defenseman added to keep Team Canada. Drew Doughty's leading. Dougie Hamilton, you like Uyghur, Evan Bouchard, Chris Tanev. I would think these top five. And maybe they haven't added one because it's probably going to be Doughty and they want to see if he's good to go. So I don't think Ekblad, Chychrun, Montour, Shabbat are in, but would you?
I like Doughty at plus odds there. Like I'm kind of surprised that he is plus odds, because I thought, when who was it? Alex Pietrangelo backed out. A lot of the people were saying, like Mackenzie Weegar or Evan Bouchard, because Doughty hadn't played yet. But once Doughty came back, like I remember seeing things on Insider Trading and all of the insiders saying, oh yeah, Team Canada's keeping an eye on Doughty and how he looks. He played like 25 minutes in the first game back. Like, I think it's gonna be Drew Doughty.
Yeah, I feel like they would have named it already if it wasn't going to be him. So, if you're getting decent value, could be interesting ad. Top point scorer of the tournament, McDavid 6-1, McKinnon 9-1. I mean, it seems like, I guess it could be anyone like Jack Eichel, Jack Hughes. I guess you have to think, okay, who's going to be in the final? But I mean, if you're getting such great players at these long shot numbers, like, you'll never get that. But again, it could be anyone. Starting goalie of Team USA must play game one, Hellebuck -588. Like, it's gonna be him, right?
I guess, yeah. I mean, Yeah, he's U.S. backup Jake Ottinger. He's not. It wasn't the chant inside Canada Life Center. Wasn't U.S. starter Jake Ottinger. He's U.S. backup. That's how the hell was the starter.
That's a good point. And top goal scorer for Canada. These are some fun bets here. Like you can do. Remember doing a fantasy pool for like the Olympics. You could do one. People, do they do drafts for the Four Nations? But Sam Reinhart, McDavid, Point. Top goals from McKinnon plus 600, then Crosby, Mark Stone, Konechny, Hagel, Marchand, Bennett. What about Mark Stone as top 14-1? We don't know. See, you're getting in early. We don't know the power play. Like, they're going to keep these up, I guess, until we see them practice and know the lines. So that would be a long shot. Mark, is he power play 1? I don't know.
Nah. I think power play 1 is going to be the top 2 guys. They're Reinhart, McDavid, and then like McKinnon, Crosby, and Makar. I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Like
yeah.
I think you have to have Reinhart in the middle, like in the pop position, because he's like maybe the best player in the league in that spot. Crosby's probably around the net because he's probably the best player in the league around the net as well. And then McDavid and McKinnon on the flanks and Makar up top. Good luck to everyone else. Don't take penalties against Canada.
Yeah, that's a deadly power play. USA is going to be pretty awesome too. So they are playing. They're playing each other on that Saturday in Montreal. And there actually is a game on the Monday that's Louis Riel Day here, and we're not going to be doing a show that day because it's Louis Riel Day. So the winner, USA favored plus 155, Canada plus 165, then Sweden and Finland. They got player points, top point scorer in the tournament, McDavid, McKinnon. I think we did that. Specials.
I'm still
Oh, we already went over these. All right, anything else, Connor? But we're going to bring in Jeff Patterson, touch on that trade that brought JT Miller. But, Saturday night, you're on the computer. You see this Luka Doncic trade. Like, fell out of my chair. How many times did you check if it was real?
A few times. I did not believe that was real. I mean, that's like the biggest trade in NBA history, easily, I think. And then I think one of the biggest trades in sports history. And one of the wild things is that it broke at like 11:30 Central on a Saturday night. Like,
yes.
I don't know. Like, it wasn't, I don't know what the ideal time would be for a trade to break, but I wouldn't say like almost midnight on a Saturday night, right? Like that was crazy. And I didn't believe it was real at first. I thought someone maybe hacked Sham's account, got in there, was playing a joke, said Luka Doncic is being traded. Haha, very funny. And then I saw the ESPN tweet with the graphics saying breaking news. And I was like, oh, this is real. This is real. It's crazy.
Yes. And the thing was, there was no rumors. Usually when a player, like we've been hearing JT Miller going to get traded for a while. And we saw Rantanen. I mean, that trade was out of nowhere. But I think it kind of made sense. And they got a good player, young player in Natchez. But you're trading a young superstar, top 3 in the league, and Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis, older player, past 30. And trades like that in the NBA, they're throwing in multiple first-round picks, and you didn't have that, and you think you want to put a player like that to the highest bidder, and you went to the Lakers to play with LeBron, and I mean the Mavs, they went to the final last year, and they were going to give him this supermax contract that now he can't get. It was wild stuff there in the NBA. I was certainly tuned in, and we'll be talking about that trade for years and years to come.
Yeah, and NBA ratings have been a big discussion this year because less and less people are watching it. I think the ratings are going to go up, at least for the Lakers games going forward, because Luka Doncic and LeBron James being on the same team is going to be must-watch TV.
For sure. And one thing about trades, you mentioned that trade Saturday night at like 11:30 or something Central Time. Friday night, second consecutive Friday night, there was an NHL trade.
Yeah.
Don't they know to make these trades like 1 o'clock on a weekday? Don't they know?
That was the best part of our trade deadline show last year. It was like a 3 or 4 hour show with the anniversary, the Winnipeg Sports Talk. Tyler Toffoli got traded to the Jets at like 10, and we were going live at 11. I was like,
yes,
this is perfect. Perfect.
I think the Monahan deal was like noon as well. A month before the deadline. So we were live We are counting down March 7, the deadline. We'll be doing a very extended show. I'm super pumped. So, Connor, thanks again. Enjoyed all your. It's great chopping it up with you here. We did a lot of chopping. Got with the heavy knives over the last week and a day. But Hustler's back tomorrow, and look forward to all your great content here, X, illegalcurve.com. Appreciate you coming on with me.
Yeah, thanks. I love being on the show for the past week and a day. And we tried to delay the Chiefs propaganda and chatter as long as we could, but Hustler's coming back tomorrow whether we like it or not. So
oh no,
tough. We tried our best.
Yeah, we tried. Yeah, limited number of Chiefs, limited number of Chiefs talk. So thanks again, Connor. Looking forward to seeing all the great stuff you got. Hey, if you think we're done, we're not done. I have one more guest. We had the big trade, JT Miller, going from Vancouver to the Rangers. I mean, what a wild scene. These guys couldn't get along, him and Elias Pettersson. I'm so pumped to be joined right now by Jeff Patterson. Rink Wide, Sakaris Price, Canucks Army, to talk all about what the heck happened here. These guys couldn't get along. Jeff, how's it going? Pretty eventful weekend for you, I'm sure. What was your reaction when you heard the news that the Canucks were sending JT Miller, Eric Brandstrom, and Jackson Dorrington to the Rangers for Philip Hedl, Victor Mancini, and a 2025 first, and then flipping that first with Vinny Desharnais, Danton Heinen, and Melvin Fernstrom to Pittsburgh for Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor. This has been a late one for you there on Friday.
Well, thanks for having me on. I think that's the end of the segment, isn't it? You just took 15 minutes to list off everything that happened on Friday night. And first of all, I feel like I'm fulfilling a duty here by being a 1T Patterson on the program in the absence of Andrew. So doing my part that way as well. What a weekend. There are a lot of people here in Vancouver that think this was the biggest sort of single-day in-season roster turnover since the Pat Quinn era back in the 1990s. So we're looking at the better part of 3 decades in that regard. And yeah, I mean, something had to give was the bottom line here, that it wasn't working. It still may not be working, but what they had for a team that had 50 wins and 109 points and won the division in the regular season and pushed Edmonton to Game 7 in the second round last year, that was all great, but that was last year. And this has been a totally different and unique and trying season for the Vancouver Canucks. And as a result, they're below the playoff bar in the Western Conference. And yeah, it just pushed into shove. And so they did what they did. The Miller trade didn't surprise me that much just because his name had been out there and there had been so much smoke around him and around the hockey club on the trade front. But then to flip the first rounder that they got as quickly as they did. Like 2 years ago when they traded Bo Horvat and they got a first rounder, they held it for 30 days at the very least before they moved it to Detroit to get Philip Hronek, and here it lasted about 30 minutes before it moved on to Pittsburgh in exchange for, just what the Canucks needed, another guy named Pettersson. So now they got 3 of them in the lineup, but they felt that they have addressed one of the needs of this hockey club, and that was adding a quality, capable, sort of top 3 defenseman, and that's what they feel they've got in Marcus Pettersson.
Jeff, when you look at this whole situation, like what happened here that they couldn't figure out how to have JT Miller? I mean, 437 points in 404 regular season games as a Canuck. It seems crazy that they couldn't make this work here.
Yeah, I think the divorce rate in society is near 50%, and sometimes there are just irreconcilable differences, right? Like, if it was easy to patch things up, nobody would get divorced. These are human beings, ultimately. One is a guy in his early 30s, married with kids from the Rust Belt in Ohio, who plays with his heart on his sleeve. The other guy is single in his mid-20s. He's from Sweden. He's got interests outside of hockey. They come from just completely different walks of life. Now, they've both been blessed to play the game at the highest levels. And when the puck dropped, that's sort of the mystery here, is why couldn't they put their differences aside? Like, you don't have to be best friends. You don't have to be buddies. You don't have to go out for dinners, whatever. But it clearly, and we may never know the truth, Mike. I mean, that's the bottom line, and now that JT's moved on, we may never ultimately know if there was a flashpoint, if it was just a series of events. I mean, there's been a lot of talk out here Was JT just too abrasive? Was he too hard? Did he cross lines when he pushed Elias Pettersson to perform? Was it contract related? Elias Pettersson got the big money. He's making more money than JT Miller, even though they're both making ridiculous sums of money. Was there some jealousy in all of this? I think some people have looked and said, Elias Pettersson struggled. His ice time wasn't really reduced. He was never publicly called out by the coach or benched the way JT Miller was. Did that play into it? And then JT took the mysterious 10-game personal leave. I just don't see that in season. So a lot of moving parts, a lot of mysteries. We've asked a lot of questions out here, but can't get anybody inside that room to go on the record to corroborate some of the stories that are out there. And that's why I say, I think people will continue to dig, even though the trade has gone down. But ultimately, JT Miller, Elias Pettersson, probably some teammates, and I would think management knows what was at the crux of this, but why they couldn't bridge their gap and just find a way to make it work. They did last year when winning smooths over an awful lot, and when it's going good individually and it's going good collectively for the group. But Bruce Boudreau's done a ton of media rounds and said, hey, when he showed up, he was told that this was already in place. So this goes back to the Travis Green area, where Bruce Boudreau, Rick Tocchet, 3 head coaches, 2 general managers, and again, nobody in that organization was able to get to the bottom of it. And that's why I come back to the divorce reference of sometimes, ultimately, there just is no path forward. And so, they ripped the Band-Aid off and made the split on Friday night, and JT's back in New York. And now, if Elias Pettersson thought there was a ton of pressure on him to perform before, he's the guy here now. He has to be the guy here now. And yet he's a huge part of why this team is scuffling along the way that it is through 52 games.
Yeah, you did mention 3 Petterssons now on Vancouver, 2 Elias Petterssons and Marcus Pettersson. I did enjoy your note that Marcus Pettersson going with M. Pettersson on the jersey. Forward Elias Pettersson, just Pettersson, and defense Elias Pettersson, E. Pettersson. So a lot to keep track of there. And I mean, there was so much noise around this. Jim Rutherford did the interview in the Globe and Mail last week. Everyone knew a deal was going to be made. How did the Canucks GM Patrick Allvin do, considering everyone knew that JT Miller or him or Pettersson was going to get moved?
Right. So again, I think there's a lot of things that you have to take into account here. JT Miller had a full no movement clause. He controlled this process. And so it's not a surprise that he wound up back in a place where A, he was drafted, B, he's familiar. Vincent Trocheck, one of his best buddies outside of hockey. So familiarity and some friendship there. So JT Miller steered the process. Now, we're led to believe that JT and his agent didn't say it's the Rangers and only the Rangers, that they were open to some other ideas here. But when you consider that a guy has a no movement clause and can essentially direct where he wants to wind up, your hands are tied as an organization. So I think Philip Hedl came in, he scored in his debut last night. That was great. Sounds excited about the opportunities that he's going to get here. Likely to be a second-line center if he can hold up his end of the bargain. So, there's some runway for him. But I think from the Canucks' perspective, and nothing is ever done in isolation. They had talked to the Penguins as well to sort of gauge the price on getting Marcus Pettersson, an unrestricted free agent, to be here. And I think the Penguins had basically let the Canucks know that it's going to cost them a first rounder. So I think that was the important part in the Ranger deal, to get the first round pick off the Rangers, and the Canucks knew that they were going to turn and flip it to Pittsburgh. So there were a lot of bodies, some at the NHL level, some in the minors, some were just thrown in to make the numbers work. Ultimately, JT Miller out the door, and in return you get Philip Hedl and Marcus Pettersson, but Pettersson a pending UFA, so now it's a question of can you sign him and at what cost. So, the deal isn't done totally yet, because I still think there are some dust that has to settle here on all of it. But the Canucks needed to get better defensively. Without a doubt, defense has been a massive issue for this hockey club all season long. And that's with Quinn Hughes having this season for the ages. And the defense still, even come out of training camp, people here knew that the defense wasn't good enough beyond Hughes and Philip Hronek. So now you can start to see a bit of a path here that Pettersson becomes a legitimate third piece, like a top 3 defenseman, and now it's about rounding out the rest of the D-core. And they've got some interesting pieces a little lower in the lineup and on the depth chart and down on the farm. So I think that is, how I look at it, that you can sort of see the foundation they're trying to put together here. Hughes, Hronek, Pettersson, all in their 20s. So, they're kind of in that wheelhouse that they want them all in the same age range. And now it's about filling out the rest of the defense core so that they're a lot better than they have been for much of the season. But they're not a better team without JT Miller. JT Miller had 103 points last season. JT Miller, as invested a hockey player, when he's on and dialed, as I've been around in the 25 years that I've covered the Vancouver Canucks, there aren't many JT Millers in the National Hockey League. That said, he just hasn't been anything close to the player that he was last year or a couple of seasons ago when he had 99 points. And again, it tracks back. He started out of training camp, some sort of nagging injury, only played one preseason game. I think he was limited a little bit there. He got off to a slow start. The team got off to a slow start. The friction started to build again. And then by the point in mid-November where he stepped away, it was going sideways. So, good to see him jump in and score a couple of goals in his debut for the Rangers, pick up points in both the games. What a weekend for him. At 5 o'clock on Friday night, he's in Dallas thinking he's playing for the Canucks. And then on Saturday afternoon, he's playing for the Rangers in Boston. And then going back to play the Vegas Golden Knights at Madison Square on Sunday. So he had to start with back-to-back games, a bunch of travel, and I'm sure his head was swimming. But he's a way better player than he has shown to this point. So I hope for him the move works out and he can get back to being that player. He's fun to watch. He's fun to deal with. He's rough around the edges. He's unvarnished. But I think that was part of his charm as well, that you ask that guy a question, he would give you an answer. And but I think sometimes through that you can see the picture being painted that, maybe he was a little rough on his teammates at times. Maybe he did cross some lines. Who knows? But he demanded a lot of himself, and I think he demanded a lot of his teammates, and if that was the source of all of this, who knows why it went off the rails the way that it did. But he's not here anymore. The Vancouver Canucks now have to find a way, and he played in every situation. He was their best face-off guy, brought the fire most nights, and raised his game in the playoffs. And I wrote a piece at Canucks Army about his legacy, and I think we may not totally know his legacy here in Vancouver until the Canucks get back to the playoffs, because there just weren't enough guys that elevated their performance in the postseason the way that he did last year. And you just hope that that's what he left behind, was this recognition and realization that that's what it takes to have success. And ultimately they only got to the second round last year. They've got a lot of ground that they've got to cover if they're truly going to be Stanley Cup contenders. So, again, in the short term, I don't think they're as good a hockey club, but their hope is that it's addition by subtraction and just clearing the black cloud that's hovered over the room for far too long here, and we'll see how it all moves forward.
Yeah, it has to be an incredibly disappointing year last year, coming from last year. First in the Pacific, taking the Oilers to Game 7 of Round 2. Now that this is out of the way, can they salvage the rest of their season and get back into a playoff spot as they're currently behind Calgary, for the second wild card?
Yeah, it's wild to think that here in the first week of February, the Canucks are looking up at the Calgary Flames. You just look at talent level. The Canucks had 5 of their own, and then they added Elias Lindholm from the Flames at this very time, this week, a year ago. He went to the All-Star game. They had 6 guys, and they had the Coach of the Year. But ultimately, last year, in reflection, was the perfect storm. So many guys had career seasons, right? Brock Besser had never been a 30-goal scorer. He got to 40. JT Miller, 103 points. Quinn Hughes emerged and won the Norris for the first time. Guys like Nils Höglander had 24 goals. Höglander's got 4 this season. Dakota Joshua had 18 goals last year, signed a big contract extension in the offseason, was diagnosed with testicular cancer on the eve of training camp. And the fact that he's playing is a victory in and of itself. But he has 2 goals and 2 assists. He's got 4 points. He had 18 goals and was this big physical force for them last year. So he hasn't launched at all. And then, all roads here in Vancouver lead back to Elias Pettersson. 102 points 2 seasons ago, 89 points last year, which was pretty solid still. But from the All-Star break on, he started to fade away and ultimately got to the playoffs where complete non-factor. And again, I think when we talked about JT Miller bringing the heat in the playoffs, I don't think it was just Miller. I think guys in that locker room looked around and said, hey, you just signed this $11.6 million contract. You're an all-star. Like, where are you? Show up. And it just didn't happen for him in the playoffs. And so there are a lot of questions here in Vancouver about, can you win with Elias Pettersson? Do you build around Elias Pettersson? And that's why I think it's important that this group gets to the playoffs this year to see. you know, if they go in as a wild card, they're going to run into Winnipeg or Edmonton or Vegas. Like, that's not going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination. Last year, part of the charm for the Canucks was they started both series at home. They won the opener in both of those series. So, you know, they weren't behind the 8 ball early, but if they have to go out on the road, you know, it's likely to be a much different story for the Vancouver Canucks this time around. And so just so many questions here now about Elias Pettersson. The biggest distraction has been moved aside. It's, you know, it's go time. And yet this is a guy that's on track for 55 points right now. And most nights he's just a non-factor. And you know, the bar has been lowered here again, making close to $12 million. He's one of the highest paid players in the National Hockey League. And you know, his supporters will tell you, oh, but he made that defensive play in the second period, or, you know, do you see the hustle on the forecheck? $11.6 million. Like, those things are great, but those should all just be, like, boiled into the mix as a baseline. Like, show me the goals, show me the games where he takes over and is the best player on the ice. And, you know, last night, Detroit comes in and Alex DeBrincat scores twice, including the overtime winner, and, you know, that's been the difference maker. And Elias Pettersson, 1 shot on goal and no points in the hockey game. And, you know, there's just way too many nights like that. So they've got 30 games to go here. But I think it is fair to say that they're not going to get to the playoffs unless he elevates his performance. And maybe it's not fair to put it all on one guy, but Quinn Hughes has delivered night in, night out, has taken his game to another level when it was already at a super high level. And Elias Pettersson's gone the other direction. And so now no JT Miller here. Can this guy drag the Canucks into the fight? Where's his fire? Where's his passion? Just a lot of things that don't make sense and don't add up when you look at a player who was a 102-point guy not that long ago.
Yeah, Jeff, thanks so much for coming on here and breaking it all down. I know you guys have had some record numbers at Canucks Army, doing the rink-wide postgame, and contributors to Harrison Price. So, Jeff, really appreciate your time, and it's been fascinating to follow this from a distance.
You're lucky you get to follow it from a distance, because record page views and all that kind of stuff are great, but you know what's even better? Wins and playoff hockey. And that's out of our control on the media side, but what's it like to just cover a Jets team that does nothing but win and seems to sail along smoothly? And I know a couple of years ago they had issues of their own in the locker room, like they've been down this road.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just from the outside looking in here, it looks like a fun season in Winnipeg. I wouldn't mind one of those here on the West Coast.
Yeah, we've had some seasons of drama for sure. You know, Pierre-Luc Dubois, I think, was certainly in the Winnipeg Sports Talk Hall of Fame for his contributions to our YouTube numbers. But, I mean, Friday's show, it was like, it was just a Jets loving. Like, what more can we say about how great they're performing? And we're looking forward to, you know, the rest of the season. Hopefully they can carry it into the playoffs as well. Jeff, thanks again for coming on. It was great talking to you as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
There he is, Jeff Patterson with 1T Patterson Jeff on X. And I did see a tweet from Jason Bruff, the host at Sportsnet Radio in Vancouver, saying how JT Miller was Sports Radio Hall of Fame. I think they only got a couple months out of him. Like, we got 2 years here out of Pierre-Luc Dubois, which I attribute all of our channel growth here to him. So you know, it was tough seeing him score against the Jets on Saturday and celebrate really hard against, you know, for scoring against his former team. But I'm very appreciative of all the conversations that he brought to this show over a 2-year period. I mean, some of our biggest shows were talking about him. So they kind of had the same thing there with JT Miller in terms of, you know, causing conversations, but Vancouver is such a great season last year, not going as well this year. Well, we'll be back tomorrow teeing up Jets, Hurricanes. Hustler will be back. Jeff Hamilton will join for some CFL and Bombers free agency. I'm going to send everyone over to Hacksaw's channel. He's talking with the Doncic trade. He's talking about everything. And for everyone who complains when we start like 2 minutes late, remember this one where we went till 3:40. So I appreciate everyone who stuck around this long. If you've made it this far, please hit the thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, you know, follow us on all the social medias. Links are in the description. Sign up for our mailing list as well. We got a Discord if you like chatting with us. You you can keep chatting. When we're not live, there's a number of Jets fans, Bomber fans, whatever, talking all the time in our Discord. Very fun conversation. So appreciate everyone who's come out today, everyone who stuck around for me hosting. They didn't turn it on when they say, hey, it's not Hustler. I'm shutting this off. Appreciate all the support. So, liking, subscribing tells YouTube we're putting out really good content, and maybe it'll show it to some other people. So we went long today. Again, appreciate everyone. Anyways, that's it for me. Winnipeg Sports Talk. We'll be back tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Oh my God!
I need to go back.
Public safety minister. This is a fentanyl czar. So I don't know, at this point, of course, none of us know how this czar person, whoever they turn out to be, will work with the existing.
Hello, this is CBC News Network. I'm Andrew Nichols. Canada's Prime Minister speaks regularly with other world leaders, but few such calls are as closely anticipated as the one that's been taking place this past hour between Justin Trudeau and Donald Trump. It comes just hours before the U.S. plans to implement 25% tariff on Canadian goods. We don't know what was said during their conversation, but the U.S. president spoke about his intentions in the Oval Office earlier today, suggesting yet again that he has a bigger idea.
But I'd like to see Canada become our 51st state. We give them protection, military protection. We don't need them to build our cars. I'd rather see Detroit or South Carolina or any one of our Tennessee, any one of our states build the cars. They can do it very easily. We don't need them for the cars. We don't need them for lumber. And we don't need them for anything. We don't need them for energy. We have more energy than they do. We don't need them for energy. So I said, why are we doing this? Why are we willing to lose between $100 billion and $200 billion a year? We don't need that. As a state, it's different. As a state, it's much different. And there are no tariffs. So I'd love to see that. But some people say that would be a long shot. If people wanted to play the game right, it would be 100% certain that they become a state. But a lot of people don't like to play the game because they don't have a threshold of pain. And there would be some pain, but not a lot. The pain would be really there. So we're going to meet again by phone at 3 o'clock and we'll let you know.
Well, let's bring in the CBC's Caroline Bagu for more on Trump's position and the messaging coming from the White House. That was from earlier in the day. We can tell you that the call must be over because you can see out of the side of the eye that Donald Trump is welcoming the Florida Panthers, the Stanley Cup champions, to the White House. Has been speaking about that. So while we wait for news on the call, bring us up to speed on what do we know at this point.
Well, we know at this point that the U.S. struck a deal with Mexico today to delay those tariffs, the 25% tariffs that U.S. President Donald Trump said would be imposed on Mexico at midnight tonight, same as Canada. We know that the U.S. and Mexico struck a deal to delay those tariffs for a month. Mexico has agreed to send 10,000 troops to the U.S.-Mexico border to try and prevent illegal migrants as well as fentanyl from flowing into the United States. We know that Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spoke with President Trump this morning. President Trump said in the Oval Office this afternoon that it was a very good conversation, but it doesn't appear to have
not ready yet.
It doesn't appear that they came to any kind of conclusion when it comes to tariffs because they spoke again at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That call is over, and we are anxiously awaiting to see what happened during that call. But earlier in the Oval Office, Trump was complaining about something else. So he's been talking about fentanyl for the last couple of weeks. He's been talking about trade deficit. That's been a problem for him between Canada and the U.S. And now he's complaining about banking regulations. Take a look.
Canada is very tough. Canada is very, we're not treated well by Canada, and we have to be treated well. Banks are not, as an example, allowed. Did you know that? That banks, American banks are not allowed to do business in Canada. Can you believe that? And that's one of many things that we talked about, and I think we'll win most of the subjects. But for some reason, a lot of things have been very unfair with Canada.
U.S. banks do, in fact, have a presence in Canada. For example, JP Morgan and Chase employs about 600 people in several Canadian cities. And Citibank, which is an American bank, has also been around since 2019. Now, the Canadian Bankers Association says that U.S. banks make up about half of all foreign banking assets in Canada, with 16 subsidiaries and branches worth about $113 billion in assets. They say that these banks specialize in a range of financial services, including corporate and commercial lending, treasury services, credit card products, investment banking, and mortgage finance.
So, Caroline, what about Trump's repeated statement that this is about fentanyl crossing the border from Canada to the U.S.? Is the White House still going with that argument, even though, as we say over and over again, we have to say it again, that it's just a tiny fraction of the fentanyl that's seized on the northern border with the U.S. compared to the southern?
For sure. And yes, that is still something that the Trump administration, as well as U.S. President Donald Trump, continues to say. He mentioned fentanyl again today from the Oval Office. He says that it's killing 200,000 Americans every year, and that Canada needs to do more to stop fentanyl from coming in. Canada has promised over $1 billion to beef up security at the Canada-U.S. border. So far, that has not been able to appease Trump. Now, Kevin Hassett is the director of the White House National Economic Council. This is what he said about fentanyl and trade today.
This matter this weekend is 100% about the drug war, and I think the outcome is likely to be very positive for Americans, Canadians, and Mexicans. What you need to do is go back and read the executive order where President Trump was absolutely 100% clear that this is not a trade war, this is a drug war.
You're saying that this is really more of a negotiation to try and say, no, we want more focus on the border, and if you give that to us, these go away?
This is not what I'm saying. People need to read the executive order. President Trump has said this is about the fentanyl crisis, right? No, but so I don't know how somebody reads the executive order if you're Canada and then comes back and says, oh, we're going to start a trade war. We're saying we're really, really serious about going after fentanyl, and President Trump means it.
As you mentioned, Andrew, just a fraction of fentanyl is coming in from Canada as compared to the U.S.-American border. U.S. Customs and Border officials say that they seized 43 pounds on the Canada-U.S. border last year, compared to more than 21,000 pounds from U.S. Mexico. You mentioned that Trump is holding a press conference for the Florida Panthers. We are anxiously awaiting the Q&A because surely some reporters are going to be asking questions about that phone call with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. I've been refreshing Truth Social. So far, I've seen nothing there. And we're waiting, of course, for the Prime Minister or the Canadian government to say what exactly happened. Will we see these tariffs today at midnight, or won't we? That's the big question.
And Caroline, I'm looking at the corner of my eye, listening to you. Do we expect Trump to take questions from reporters?
He usually does, so I'm hoping he will, especially on a day like today.
Yeah.
So either he'll take questions or he will post about it on Truth Social, which is what he did when he was talking about the deal that was struck with Mexico. And then later in the Oval Office, he did take questions about it, as well as a variety of things. So at some point, we are going to find out whether it's through Truth Social or a Q&A. We're going to find out exactly what happened, and hopefully we will hear very soon.
Okay. Caroline, thank you. The CBC's Caroline Bargut, live in Washington. So, as I mentioned, the Prime Minister spoke to the U.S. President last hour, their second phone conversation of the day. The CBC's Karina Roman is tracking the latest developments from Ottawa. She joins us now live. We are certainly waiting for any information coming out of that phone call. It is kind of unusual to sort of be thinking about this and watching Trump welcoming, I don't know if we have that shot.
The Florida Panthers?
Maybe. Yeah, the Florida Panthers, the Stanley Cup champions. So he has been
Canadians
speaking.
on that team.
There are a lot of Canadians on that team. So this is just the scene right now taking place in the White House. Donald Trump, this is pretty customary, right? You win a championship and then you get welcomed to the White House. Do you want to listen a little bit? Let's just... take a little listen.
I said air is red. I heard that name so much. Verhage is scoring champion, and he's scoring, and really the opening goal of that game was very important. Was that put you in a position where the butterflies out a little bit. Way to go! Congratulations. That's a great job, everybody. Carter skillfully directed a shot past the Oilers goalie and gave the Panthers your first lead in the series since Game 3. And
there we go.
To forget.
Okay, we just wanted to give you a little. So this is what's happening now live. Probably Canadians don't want to be reminded that yes, it was a Canadian team that was
Another
beaten.
year without the cup at home.
Yes, the Edmonton Oilers. All right. So as we wait for any information about that phone call, I mean, this is just to think that the biggest trading relationship in the world could be hinging on a phone call and a last-ditch attempt to try and avert, because that has been the Canadian government's position, right, to try and avert this trade war, which could happen at midnight tonight.
Yes, and we are waiting for word both from obviously the government here in Ottawa and the Prime Minister. Obviously, we know the call is done because the President has moved on to other things, and we assume as well that the President will let us know his thoughts on that call as well. So we are all refreshing to try and see what we can learn from that. There is also going to be, according to federal sources, a U.S.-Canada or Canada-U.S. Cabinet Committee meeting, that special cabinet here in Ottawa. I think much of it perhaps virtual, but that's supposed to happen at 6 o'clock. So I don't know how much information we will learn from the Canadian side of things before that meeting happens. Sometimes, in fact, often we hear more about these calls and meetings first from the Americans. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes and find out whether the Mexico deal was mentioned on the call and perhaps, why Mexico would get this stay of tariff execution and Canada wouldn't, especially with Canada's efforts to appease what Donald Trump said was the issue at hand, which is the border and fentanyl. But meanwhile, while we wait for those in power right now to do what they need to do to try and defend Canada, the leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre, also talked today about his plan if he were Prime Minister, what he would do in a plan he calls his Canada First plan in terms of beefing up interprovincial trade, having more national standards for things like trucking rules or professional accreditation to make the flow of people and goods easier to go west and east, not just north and south. He also talked about increasing and perhaps having a military presence at Canada's borders to secure the border, including surveillance towers, although I don't know whether that would be something that there's any evidence to show that those actually work, especially on such a long border that we have. He also took the opportunity to blame Canada's situation that we're currently in terms of Canada's vulnerability to these threats on the current government and its, as he would say, lack of action on a number of issues over the last 10 years. But at the end of his news conference, he was asked about Trump again repeating his desire to make Canada the 51st state. Here's what Pierre Poilievre had to say.
Canada is an independent country. We will never be the 51st state, and we will have a strong and independent country. And by the way, my Canada First plan will make us more independent and less reliant on the Americans.
As well, it's sort of important to note that the things that he has in his Canada First plan, many of them are being worked on or have been worked on by both different levels of government. The Conservatives likely arguing that they would move more quickly and that they can be trusted to actually do these things that have been worked on perhaps but not come to fruition over 10 years of a Liberal government. He did sidestep questions, though, ones on the Mexican deal that we've been reporting on, whether or not he would support a help package for Canadian workers and businesses before taking down the government once Parliament resumes, or if Parliament were to resume earlier. And Pierre Poilievre saying, well, right now it's not sitting, it's prorogued, and therefore there can be no vote on anything. So he didn't actually answer that question.
And Karina, we're hearing a lot from Canada's premiers today and how they're responding to Trump's tariffs. What are they saying?
Well, you have Doug Ford, who's campaigning right now as the leader of the Progressive Conservatives, talking about canceling the contract with Elon Musk's Starlink. I believe that Musk put on his platform sort of something like, oh, well, or that, not a very robust response, sort of a shrug of the shoulders kind of thing. But Ford also talked about making more stuff in Canada, especially in Ontario. You have almost across the board provinces and territories pulling U.S. Alcohol off the shelves. It has been noted that that doesn't seem to have been announced by either Alberta or Saskatchewan. Those two provinces have privatized liquor distribution and sales, so perhaps that's why people have not heard from those provinces on that measure. There are provinces like Susan Bolt, the Premier of New Brunswick, talking about bringing down interprovincial trade barriers. Many of the premiers, including Holt, talking about procurement, government procurement, and not entertaining bids from U.S. companies. And then you have Scott Moe from Saskatchewan, the premier there, bringing up a proposal he's brought up before about having the Canada Border Services agents fall under the military and be brought under the military to militarize the Canadian-U.S. border, which obviously has some people raising their eyebrows. But he says it would do not just that, it would also help with another goal that he believes is important. Have a listen.
It would provide two things immediately. One, provide the availability for troops along our border, the 49th parallel between Canada and the U.S., thereby addressing concerns that President Trump has raised. And two, would bring our CBSA funding in under the military investment, would be part of ensuring we are working towards our 2% NATO commitment that we have.
That said, in an interview, I believe I'm just seeing a note here that General Carignan, the Chief of Defense Staff, has said that there's no intention to militarize the border, at least at this point. So that's merely a proposal right now from one of the premiers. The other thing that the premiers really want to do and have all talked about is diversifying markets and becoming less dependent on the U.S. That's something that the Premier of British Columbia also talked about today. Have a listen.
Right now, major firms in British Columbia are in the process of redirecting their critical minerals, their energy products, to markets outside the United States to respond to the tariff threat. This isn't to punish the Americans. This isn't anything else. This is in response to tariffs that have been put on by the United States. The absurdity of this, of allies and neighbors hurting each other, has really, I think, come home to many British Columbians and Canadians.
Now, many would have a resounding yes to the idea of diversification, something that's been talked about in Canada for decades. But many experts would say even with successful diversification, it will not take away from the idea or the fact that the U.S. will continue to be our biggest trading partner for now and for many years to come. You're just that integrated that you can't just siphon off a whole chunk of that and put it with another country or another economic union somewhere else. So that's the reality of the situation.
Okay, I've just listening to you and watching the Panthers and Donald Trump. And by the way, this is just let's just okay. Donald Trump, all right, is leaving with some members of the Florida Panthers and heading to the Oval
not taking
Office.
questions.
So it looks like, yeah, he didn't take questions. I think he just walked by. So we may get some information, we may not, we don't know. This is the way we roll. But we'll come back with you, Karina, if we do. CBC's Karina Roman live in Ottawa. For more on this, I want to bring in Louise Blais. She's a former Canadian ambassador to the United Nations and a former Consul General of Canada in Atlanta. Louise, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you for having me.
So we are waiting for this call, for the details of the second call. One was in the morning, one was at 3 o'clock between the Prime Minister and the President. I mean, do you think we're going to get information? What do you expect to come out of that call? Do you have any information on what's come out of that?
I'm also checking my phone. Yeah. No, I mean, it's we're watching now Ottawa and see what the Prime Minister will say. It's probably, I would expect that the demands that the President had were a moving target and might have been really difficult to respond to. I mean, it seems like he's asked us for one thing, we met it, he comes up with other requests, so who knows what he really asked the Prime Minister today. It was obviously this morning something that the Prime Minister was not prepared to give him. It sounds as if he wants the entire country, and clearly the Prime Minister is not going to give him that. So let's wait and see if there isn't a deal, then our conversation is going to be ongoing for a deal, or have conversations broken off. We just don't know.
Louise, I just want to think about how extraordinary what you just said. You're a former Canadian ambassador to the United Nations, and you were saying that the ask of Donald Trump, I mean, we've heard the clips, the ask of Donald Trump is basically turn Canada into the 51st state. Like that's what's on the table. Do that or else. Is that kind of what you're gleaning from what he has been saying? It's not about fentanyl, it's not about the migrants crossing, is that it?
I think so, and I think what we're seeing, and we had Mr. Navarro this afternoon talk about that this is a drug war, not a trade war, and all of a sudden they're coming up with these expressions that they weren't using before. I think the legal basis upon which they're doing this is pretty new. And they had to invoke a national emergency, security emergency, so they need to tie tariffs some that has to do with security. But you're hearing the president go off on all sorts of different directions. One day it's the deficit, one day it's banks, one day it's he doesn't need any of the things we make. You feel that for him, the rationale is different than what the legal basis for what he's trying to do. And this is why you're seeing the aides come back to the security, the fentanyl, the border. And I think that was a real argument for Mexico, but we have reported often and repeatedly that really the quantities are not all in the same stratosphere, and that for Canada, the agenda seems to be different.
I just want to let you know, Louise, that I don't think we have that clip. I don't know if you were rolling on that or not, but as Donald Trump was leaving, the Stanley Cup champions were there, the Florida Panthers. As he was leaving, he was asked by Caitlin Collins of CNN about tariffs, whether they would be coming. Trump said that the call with Trudeau went well. Then when she asked if the tariffs are coming, he said, watch. Just want to make sure. Yeah, so that is the latest. So what do you make of that? What do you, I mean, as somebody that's, I mean, who knows, right? But what do you make of just that?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think it's a little stupid. Again, I don't think, he doesn't treat our leader and our Prime Minister the same way that he treats the President of Mexico. He seems to give her a lot of respect, compliments her. With us, it's the call went well, but we don't really get the sense that there was a deal that was struck. It's just more difficult because, you know, he doesn't have the history with President Sheinbaum. She was elected last year, came to power in the fall. It's his first time really dealing with her. He seems to have developed a good working relationship. With our Prime Minister, he has a history. And our Prime Minister obviously defended Canada in the USMCA negotiations. Afterwards, after the President was out of power, said certain things. We remember the in Charlevoix, the president left feeling that the prime minister betrayed him. So there's a history there. We feel it's a bit more difficult to get through the fog of all of that, to get to the final, the root of what the president. And so again, took the message when he was much clearer this morning, and the president, Scheinbaum, was able to come out and make her announcement very quickly. So I think all eyes are on Ottawa.
So, Louise, Justin Trudeau will not be prime minister in 5 weeks from now. So this is it he wants Canada to become the 51st state? Is it that he doesn't like Justin Trudeau? He said that he doesn't like the leadership in Canada. And so this is about who's prime minister. And so if there's another prime minister, whether it's a Liberal prime minister or a Conservative prime minister, Pierre Poilievre, if the Conservatives were to win an election that'll happen likely this year, is that going to make all of the difference?
I'm still waiting.
I don't think it's going to make all the difference at this point. I think that Donald Trump's position has evolved. And he's certainly going in a direction that's difficult to come back from. I think he's in a position of wanting to extract things out of Canada. And I think it's going to be a challenge for any prime minister to manage this relationship. Not to say that it cannot be managed. It can. And we're seeing a lot of the folks around the president are talking to our ministers. There's a lot of communication going back and forth. We always hear that the calls are cordial, that they go well. We want that to continue. But I don't think it's going to be a walk in the park for any prime minister to manage this presidency moving forward.
And Louise, can you tell me a little bit about some of those that back channel that's going on, right? Because you've got Commerce Secretary, you've got all kind of his cabinet secretaries speaking about what it's about. It really, really is about fentanyl, okay? And then it's 43 pounds versus 21,000 pounds. I mean, it just can't be about fentanyl, or maybe it can be, I don't know. And then you have Donald Trump coming on saying, quite aggressively that he wants Canada to become the 51st state. So, who's, at the end of the day, it is the American president's decision, right, in terms of this executive order. He is the one that can impose these 25% tariffs, right? And this could be happening as of midnight.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
I mean,
likely.
It's likely at this point. He's also, we know that he needs the revenues. He needs the revenues to get the tax cuts. He said there's no other better word in the dictionary than tariffs. So if he exempts us and Mexico, then where is he going to get, the money to do what he wants to do with his tax cuts for corporations and the rich and so on. So I think it's difficult to see what his end game is. And it changes from one day to the next. We'll have to wait and see. And even if we get over this hurdle, we have to remember that there is this USTR study that is mandated that will be tabled on April 1st that will look more holistically around the world where the tariffs should be imposed and on what and to what degree. So it feels that even if we kind of get a little bit of a reprieve like the Mexican did, because that's all they got is 1 month, then there's going to be another wave and another demand down the road. So I'm sure that is playing in the mind of the Prime Minister, and he's thinking, well, if I am going to make a deal, maybe I don't rush into it. I want to make sure that the deal will hold. And we also have to, what is the deal going to be worth? I mean, basically the president is staring up NAFTA and USMCA now, imposing or threatening to impose these tariffs. You have to have that trust between the two leaders that whatever agreement you're going to make is going to be respected, because there's a lot of uncertainty in the system now, and what we need is to tone down that uncertainty and know what we're dealing with. I'm sure that's in the Prime Minister's mind.
How would you characterize this moment in terms of in the history of Canada-U.S. relations?
Well, it's unprecedented in modern times. I mean, there were periods of time in the 19th century where they talked about annexing Canada. Well, at the time there was different territories and different provinces, and so there has been moments like this, obviously, but in modern times this is unprecedented. We have disagreed, historically on some big issues that we have had inheritance. But the way that the president has cast the relationship, described Canadians as dependent, as abusing of the United States, is really unprecedented. But the good news that I can tell Canadians is I'm here in the U.S. right now. I'm interacting with a lot of Republicans, and I can tell you that this view is not shared across the board. It's one that the president has, that he's now familiarizing and trying to pick up on among his base, but it is not at all. It does not have the critical mass necessary to make good on this ultimate threat to annexes.
So he doesn't have it yet, but he keeps talking it up, trying to maybe gin it up, trying to get it. So this just constantly going at it, day after day after day. I mean, is this a dangerous moment for Canada?
Well, it is, and we have to take it very seriously. I think that it's a wake-up call, as many have said. I think there are things that we need to do to strengthen our country, strengthen our defense, our security, but also our economy. We had structural problems in Canada way before Donald Trump came to power. We need to address those, and we need to really make sure that we build an economy and a country that's resilient to this kind of, even the threat are damaging. And so this is a time where we have to work together as Canadians and tackle some of the big issues that we've neglected, as like the interprovincial non-tariff barriers that we have, and as well as other measures that we could take to make sure that Canada remains a great place to do business and we can continue to attract international capital again.
Louise, you are a former Canadian ambassador to the UN, so you've dealt with diplomats from all over the world. Where's the rest of the world right now in terms of this attack on Canada? They seem to be nowhere.
It's interesting. You know, I have to tell you, today I was speaking with certain groups in the United States, really senior, well-funded groups that are going to legal means to perhaps, because some of the things that the president is doing might be unconstitutional, including the tariffs, depending on the mechanism he's using. So you're looking at international law, and if any other country talked about annexing their neighbor, you would have discussions at the UN. For some reason now, everyone's a little stunned. Everyone's a little bit paralyzed. There was the sense in the past that Donald Trump, president and candidate and private citizen, says all sorts of things that he doesn't always make do on. So there was a bit of willingness to let it go for a while as a joke. But now that it keeps going on and on and on, I think there might be ways in which Canada might invoke certain international mechanism to try to rally support. At the moment, I think that would be too soon to do that. I think everyone is trying to find their way. We hear often about, well, we should work with the European Union. If the U.S. is going to slap such a high tariff, maybe we need to get closer with Europe. I'm not seeing this happening right now. I think everyone's looking, observing. They cannot believe that we're receiving this treatment, but they're willing to kind of let it play out. It's just been a few weeks. So I think at this time, everyone's looking, observing, but I'm certainly not ruling out the possibility of international mechanisms and movements and coalitions that will come together to say that people can say that.
Louise, appreciate your time and your insight as always. Thank you. Louise Bray is a former Canadian ambassador to the United Nations.
Thank you.
We're taking you now to Winnipeg. Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew has been speaking about the incoming Trump tariffs. Let's listen.
Great to see Manitobans united and people are stepping up. You got leaders of business, you got labor, Indigenous leadership, people from all regions of the province, people from the ag industry, the mining sector, and there's a consensus, a unanimity that now's the time to stand up for Canada, protect our jobs, and protect our economy. So it's really great to have that buy-in, a lot of great ideas being shared. Of course, there's a ton of concern about the potential impacts of tariffs and a lot of good ideas about how we can work together recognizing that this is an immediate challenge we're facing, but it's also something over the long term. We need to have a good strategy, not just for tomorrow and the weeks to come, but we need to have a strategy over the coming years to make sure that we don't let ourselves be in a vulnerable position again. How do we safeguard our jobs? How do we Trump-proof our economy in Manitoba? That's the discussion that we're having, and it's great to see the participation. Yeah, there's tons of ideas, like, you name the sector, and people are bringing forward some important initiatives. I think one of the good things that we got to keep in mind here is that in the first instance, in the first glance, we have to bring in supports for business and for workers to ensure that they can keep their head above water and we protect jobs in this country and in this province. But over the longer term, when we talk about how do we pivot our economy to sustain a good standard of living for the average middle class person out there for the years to come, that's where all of a sudden the conversation turns to what do we need to do in terms of mining and energy? What do we need to do in terms of education as being a huge part of our future economic plan? And there's a lot of those good suggestions being brought forward. Not making any news on that. That's not really what we're talking about this morning. Yeah. People who drink American booze? Yeah, so, we spoke to some private retailers and folks who sell American booze, and what I would say is this: we're taking action as the government. We're pulling booze off of our shelves, and in the future, people in the private sector aren't going to be able to order booze through the wholesaler, but we're not being directive to them. And so some conversations and consultation happened, but as you saw over the course of the weekend, the situation is one that we have to respond to forcefully to stand up for ourselves as Canadians and Manitobans. Well, here's the great thing about cutting off American booze. The Canadian stuff is way better. Okay? So if your patriotic duty is to grab a 1919 or a Crown Royal, I think most Manitobans think that's a good deal. And when we're talking about the wholesale price, it's a perfect, better substitute, I would say, actually, a better substitute. So yeah, so I think this is something that we're doing to send a message to the U.S. to say we're not going to be pushed around, we're not going to have our sovereignty infringed, but at the same time, we're trying to make sure that we do this in a way that the average Manitoban out there just embraces that Canadian pride that everybody's feeling right now, and can do some tangible, real things in your day-to-day life to support our country. Okay, we're going to go to Zoom now.
Okay, thank you, Premier. We have 3 outlets on the line today. First up, Steve Lambert. Go ahead, Steve.
Good afternoon, Premier. Question there about other tariffs and things. I know in Ontario, Doug Ford is sort of he's referred to Elon Musk and said that the government's cancelling his contract with Starlink. I know there are a lot of balls in the air, but one of the things that the Manitoba government does is it subsidizes electric vehicle purchases through rebates, including Tesla products. Is the government looking at changing that?
We're certainly looking at all options that we have to respond. And I think some of the discussion that we've had recently is about where do you spend your money as a Manitoban out there. And certainly where the province of Manitoba spends its money, I think is something that we're thinking very, very carefully about. And so one specific step that I've taken is to ask our Minister of Finance and the other ministries that are engaged with the economy to look at procurement and to ask whether we need to prevent American companies from bidding on these great opportunities.
We're interrupting this to bring you some major breaking news from the CBC's Karina Roman from Ottawa. Karina.
Okay, so the actual headline here is that Canada has also secured a pause on the tariffs for 30 days. And this is in a post on X by the Prime Minister. If I could just have the liberty to read it to everyone so that they can see the background. He says, I just had a good call with President Trump. Canada is implementing our $1.3 billion border plan, reinforcing the border with new choppers, technology and personnel, enhanced coordination with our American partners, and increased resources to stop the flow of fentanyl. Nearly 10,000 frontline personnel are and will be working on protecting the border. And here's where the new stuff comes in. Oh, there, you've got it up. Great. In addition, Canada is making new commitments to appoint a fentanyl czar. We will list cartels as terrorists, ensure 24/7 eyes on the border, launch a Canada-U.S. joint strike force to combat organized crime, fentanyl, and money laundering. I have also signed a new intelligence directive on organized crime and fentanyl, and we will be backing it with $200 million. Proposed tariffs will be paused for at least 30 days while we work together. So that is the news. Obviously, this is just breaking. This is just coming in. But the call at 3 p.m. between the president and the prime minister has clearly resulted in a deal, much like the one we have been reporting on with Mexico, to hold off on the tariffs for 30 days, I guess, to see how this actually gets executed and whether it's enough to satisfy Donald Trump to permanently decide not to hold tariffs, what would be very punishing and damaging tariffs to our economy, but also the U.S. economy beyond those 30 days. So that is just coming in right now. And there will be a meeting, as we know, as we've been reporting, between the Canada-U.S. Cabinet Committee of the government, who will obviously be talking about this, and perhaps we will get further information, especially about these new measures being announced by the Prime Minister, about how they will work.
Karina, I mean, this is just an unbelievable day, right? I mean, you have the 9 o'clock call. Let's just kind of go back and let's talk about the day. The 9 o'clock call with the Prime Minister as well, the U.S. President talking with the Mexican President, announcing that the Mexican President there would be this 1 month reprieve, and then a 3 o'clock call. And it's sort of, the day kind of just wasn't sure. We got some alerts